input. We welcome and encourage input from the community. You can join us here at the district office. We have limited seating available. We are using screening protocols and social distancing. You may also put input online. Community input must be informative in nature, address the entire board rather than one particular member. The Board of Education cannot engage in a discussion or debate in response, but we will take the information for review and direct it to the appropriate district employee to respond. There was no community input for tonight's meeting. This meeting is now called to order. It is January 6, 2021. We are at the district office and it is 6:33 p.m. Our mission is to provide a safe and caring climate and culture in which we engage, inspire, educate, prepare, and empower all learners in partnership with their surrounding community to be successful in today and tomorrow's society. Les, will you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Les, then will you call roll? Board members, will you please list your location and the reason for your location if you are not at the district office?
Shannon Hawes.
Here at the district office.
Monica Segura Schwartz.
I am here at my mom's house.
I don't hear her. Do you?
I heard her a little louder, Monica.
I am here at my mom's house.
Okay. And your mom's house is in Colombia? Okay.
Bogota.
All right. Thank you. Al Dahlgren.
Here at the district office.
Natalie Ringsmuth.
Here, I'm at my home in St. Cloud.
Zach Dorhold. Les Green is present at the DAO. Scott Andresen.
Present at the DAO.
Okay.
Thank you. Next, I'm looking for approval of tonight's board meeting agenda and work session agenda. I have a from
Second.
Scott, I need a second,
Second.
and Al seconds. Les, will you call roll?
Monica Segura Schwartz.
Yes.
Al Dahlgren.
Yes.
Natalie Ringsmuth.
Yes.
Zach Dorholt. Les Green is yes. Scott Andresen.
Yes.
Shannon Hawes.
Yes. Thank you, Les. Next is approval of tonight's consent agenda. On our consent agenda for tonight is approval of personnel staff changes, approval of monthly treasurer's report, approval of monthly financial report, proposed revised board policy 601, school district curriculum and instruction goals, third and final reading, proposed revised board policy 616, school district system accountability, third and final reading, and proposed revised board policy 203.2, order of the regular school board meeting, third and final reading. Looking for a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
So
So
moved.
moved. Second.
Les, could you please call roll?
Al Dahlgren. Hang on. Wait. Sorry. I don't think I'm on.
Yeah, you are.
Yes.
All right. Natalie Ringsmuth.
Yes.
Zach Dorholt. Yes. Les Green is yes. Scott Andresen.
Yes.
Shannon Hawes.
Yes.
Monica Segura Schwartz,
Yes.
Thank you, Les. Next, we move on to discussion and action items. We have three discussion action items for tonight. First up is approval of the 2021-2022 high school course guide being presented tonight by Lori Kolsch, Executive Director of Learning and Teaching, and Dr. Lori Putnam, Assistant Superintendent of Teaching for Secondary Education.
Good evening, Chair Haas, members of the school board, Superintendent Jett. Dr. Putnam and I are here tonight to do the annual ask for approval of our high school course guide. And this year we wanted to update you on some changes that we've made with the registration process. So I hope that you had a chance to look at the high school course guide that was attached to the agenda back in December. Ryan, if you can go ahead and go forward. We wanted to highlight for you a couple of the areas of change and additions to the course guide. The course guide this year was reviewed with multiple stakeholders' input. We had counselors and teachers and learning and teaching staff and administrators all take a close look at what was included in our course guide. This year, we created a common guide for both Apollo and Tech. And what we looked at was having common course names for courses that were similar and the same at both schools. We looked at all of the course descriptions, and teachers provided updates for those course descriptions, and we updated the format. If you notice, it looks different than it has in the past. Tammy's communication team did wonders at making this look real professional and ready for our students and our families. We did add in the course handbook the 2 new courses that you approved for inclusion at our high schools. 2 changes that you'll see in our course handbook this year. Language arts, after having a lot of talking with our language arts teachers, they decided to move Language Arts 11 to a year-long course rather than trimester elective courses so that we have consistency for our 11th graders in language arts. We also changed the name of Algebra 1.2 to be Intermediate Algebra so that it more closely aligns with state standards and what the course actually is. And one thing that didn't get on here that I wanted to make sure to point out to you was the inclusion of our career and college pathways, and that actually might be on the next slide, and really drawing attention to that in our course handbook and how our courses relate to preparing our students for the future. And there it is, the career pathways and clusters piece. You'll see that that's real evident and front and center at the beginning of our course handbook, our course catalog. Our departments this year had the option to embed videos in the course catalog so that students could click on the video and see and hear a little bit about what the departments have to offer. This is something that we'll be expanding next year with even the option for teachers to add some information about their specific courses. We also included some photos of our students so that it really is about our students here in District 742. And then Willie and Lori created a welcome letter that's right in the handbook that addresses our planning and our community partners that had a lot to do with our course development. And at the end of this, we will be asking for approval of that course catalog so that our students can begin registering. And Dr. Putnam's going to share with you our registration process.
Thank you, Lori. Good evening. We had several new goals for high school course registration this year. The first was to ensure the process could be completed well, regardless of the learning model we were in. This means that counselors and staff had to prepare materials and a process that was effective for both in-person and distance learning. Our second goal was to increase accessibility to the information for all families. And as always, our goal is to help students be knowledgeable about the choices available, how these choices impact their futures, and to get excited about their learning options. And I want to take this opportunity to say a sincere thank you to our high school counselors and administrators who truly went above and beyond this year to meet these goals. And now please enjoy this teaser video created to get our students excited about course registrations. And a sincere thank you also to Tammy DeLand and her team for creating these videos for us. There are many more videos that go along with this process, and they've put an incredible amount of time into this work. So thank you to the communications department. As you saw, beginning next week, students will meet with their advisory teachers, and the teachers will ensure that our students have access to the registration courses in Schoology that are done by graduation year, and they'll review the outcomes and process with our students. The first step of the registration process is to ensure students understand their credit progression toward an on-time graduation. Students will be guided through their academic history, which is available through Skyward, and complete a credit check. These credit checks will be available in Schoology for not only school staff, but also families to review. Students will then review the course guide that Lori described, including the informational videos created by teachers and staff. The course guide, graduation requirements, and registration form will be available in Schoology until mid-February. And that means we've greatly extended the time students and families will have with this information compared to past years. Additionally, our counselors will provide 2 weeks of virtual drop-in time to meet with students who have questions or need assistance. As you heard, one of our additional goals was to ensure that our families had increased access to this information. So our Apollo and Tech administrators and counselors have planned family meetings that will take place in English, Somali, and Spanish. And they'll be grouped by classes. So the rising 10th through 12th graders will have family town halls on 2 different evenings. And then freshmen, or the class of 2025, our 9th graders, will also have family town halls again in English, Spanish, and Somali. And this time those will be separated into Apollo and Tech, because while we want to certainly create a combined experience, we also want to help our incoming, our rising 9th graders, our incoming students, to begin to develop some of that school spirit as well. Our counselors are also offering day-long drop-in office hours for families. So a family will have access to a Google Meet, and they can just pop in and talk with their child's teacher about potentially what classes their child should take, or if they have any questions about graduation requirements. And again, in Schoology, that program will house all of the information with the videos, which have also been translated in English, Somali, and Spanish. So thank you very much to Ellen Stewart and our equity department for all of their work in making this information accessible to our families. And now I'd like to say thank you. If you have any questions, and I'll turn it back to Lori.
We'll ask for questions first, and then we'll ask for approval of the course guide.
I have a question. What are some of the career pathways and clusters? Could you give me some examples?
So Scott, I don't know if you can pull up the handbook that is linked in the document. What we do is we work with the Minnesota Department of Ed Career Pathway Program, and I'm going to pull up my handbook here. There's on page, I want to look at the page number here, on page 4 of the handbook is the career pathway, the career wheel that we work off of. And you'll be able to see on there, and I can show it to you later if you want as well. You can see the different career fields and the career pathways on there.
Now, are these available at both Apollo and Tech?
They are.
I thought we had some specialization. For example, automotive was at Apollo rather than Tech.
Yep, we do have a couple of courses that, you know, it would be a duplication of large machines and things. So we house some of the more advanced programs at Tech and some at Apollo, but students at both schools have the option to register and take the courses. So no matter which school they're at, they can take the course.
Okay, would these be in person or online?
It depends. We have in the past transported students between schools when they've registered, but we have learned this year that we can do a lot of the courses online. So next year we'll look at what best meets the needs of the students, whether that's being in person at one of the schools or if it's online.
Okay, I was just having a hard time imagining changing oil online or dicing meat or online.
Yep, the hands-on portions we would hope would be in person. But we've learned this year that we can do a lot of modeling and a lot of practice online as well.
Thank you.
Les, do you have any questions? No. Zach?
No, I don't.
Al? No. Monica?
No.
Natalie?
No, thank you.
I just have one question, Lori. We do provide transportation though, correct? If that would be an obstacle, you were,
Correct, we do.
okay, so that's not a barrier for any of our students
Right.
to cross over. Okay.
And when we have students between the two schools, we work real closely. The counselors work together about the scheduling of what time those courses are offered.
Okay, I guess I have one more question. When we were registering on paper, it was real clearly defined. Here's your box, fill in something here. Here's your box, fill in something there. So it kept you in the line as to making sure that you are picking the right categories, that you're not missing a math or an English. Is that, now that it's online, is that real clear to make sure that nobody accidentally?
It is. Yep. They've done a really nice job translating that from paper pencil to an electronic format.
Okay. Well, this is great. Thank you. So we're looking for a motion for approval of the 2021-2022 high school course guide.
So move.
Second,
Okay, Les, will you call roll?
Al Dahlgren,
Yes.
Natalie Ringsmuth,
Yes.
Zach Dorold. Yes. Les Green is yes. Scott Andresen,
yes.
Shannon Hawes,
Yes.
Monica Segura Schwartz.
Yes.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, point of order, if I might.
Yes.
I neglected to indicate the other executive people who were here. Is
Oh.
that necessary to do, or shall we forego
Let's
it?
just do it right now. How about-
All right. Also in attendance at this meeting, Willie Jett, Superintendent of Schools, Assistant Superintendent of Elementary Education, Dr. Marcia Beisch, Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Education, Dr. Lori Putnam, Executive Director of Learning and Teaching, Lori Posch, Executive Director of Student Services and Special Education, Carol Potter, Executive Director of Research, Evaluation, Assessment, and Enrollment, Dr. Sylvia Huff, Executive Director of Community Education, Adam Holm, Executive Director of Finance and Business Services, Amy Scalarud, Executive Director of Operation, Gary Ganji, Executive Director of Human Resources, Tracy Flynn Bowe, Director of Community Engagement and Communication, Tammy Deland, Director of Equity Services, Ellen Stewart, Director of Technology, Ryan Cox, and Executive Assistant Mary Kusterman. Thank you. Sorry for the.
Thank you. I didn't notice. Okay, thank you. Next up, we have the strategic plan presented tonight by Dr. Lori Putnam, Assistant Superintendent for Secondary Education, Lori Posch, Executive Director of Learning and Teaching, and Dr. Sylvia Huff, Executive Director of Research, Evaluation, Assessments, and Enrollments.
Thank you so much. Good evening, Chair Haas, members of the board, and Superintendent Judd. And thanks, Ryan, for being willing to present for us. As you know, our strategic plan is a 3-year rolling plan. It was adopted January of 2020 and would be due for adoption this January based on last year's timeline. Tonight, we will provide an update on the progress we've made toward meeting the strategic objectives and initiatives in the strategic plan, and ask that the board adopt a 21-24 strategic plan in July. We are asking for this adjustment because a July-June cycle makes more sense because our work primarily happens during the school year and our data production cycle aligns with the September-June calendar. Additionally, we faced challenges this past year, as you're well aware, due to the pandemic, and our ability to provide data is limited. For example, we could not conduct climate surveys, MCAs, or the Spring STAR assessment in 2019-20, and these are vital indicators of progress made. Our mission and core values drive our work and informed our strategic plan. The mission and core values remain unchanged, and we would recommend when we look to adopt that it would remain the same then as well. Our administrators, our staff, our community have really embraced our mission and core values. Also, you can go on, Ryan. As a reminder to our community, the student achievement outcomes in our strategic plan are driven by the world's best workforce, which you'll hear more about later this evening from Lori. And they are the foundation of our strategic plan. These outcomes are: all students are ready for kindergarten, all academic and opportunity gaps based on race, ethnicity, culture, gender, identity, and ability are closed, all students demonstrate growth in reading and math, all students attain career and college readiness before graduating from high school, and all students graduate from high school. In preparation for our progress report for you this evening, we gathered stakeholder input from non-licensed staff from each department, licensed staff through building leadership teams, as well as district staff and cabinet. During tonight's presentation, we will provide a progress review on each strategic focus area and their accompanying objectives and initiatives. These are going to be located on the left-hand side of each slide. On the right side of each slide, we provided the measurement outputs and outcomes as identified in the strategic plan and the action steps we've taken. We are going to share a lot of information with you, and we'll pause after each strategic focus area to take questions from board members. So to begin, the first strategic focus area is positive climate and culture, as you'll see in the top left. And the strategic initiative, bottom left, is 1.1A, and that's to integrate social emotional wellness and supports. We've taken many steps to meet this initiative. Our student services team ensured SEL lesson plans and a calendar were created, and they were implemented weekly in our advisory classes and morning meetings. We also have a dedicated SEL team to monitor data and provide support to students for SEL needs. And our counselors and social workers are doing second and third tier of supports. We have words of the week for SEL. And for example, for one of the weeks in December, it was hope. And then we provide schools with social stories to address concerns that we see in our data. We've also prioritized teaching digital citizenship in our advisories, which was essential this year, given the amount of time we've had to spend in distance learning. ABE has made culturally and linguistically responsive teaching a focus of their work to ensure they're meeting the unique needs of their adult learners. And our principals are meeting bi-weekly to discuss equity strategies aligned to improving students' sense of safety and belonging. Out of this work, we expanded GSAs into the middle level, and we'll be bringing our middle and high school GSAs together for support on occasion. We are also conducting targeted focus groups with the assistance of RAE and Equity. This next slide shows Strategic Initiative 1.1b, and that's to ensure every school and district facility is welcoming and safe. To meet this initiative, every school conducted start-of-year listening or welcome back conferences with families this fall. We expanded the length of time families and staff had together so that they could build relationships. We also continued with web and link crew orientations despite the challenges of a virtual environment. Our students were really amazing to pull that off. Our buildings and grounds and HR departments have ensured we have secure entrances or greeters at every entrance in each building. Through our collaboration between business services and operations, and through the commitment of our board to student and staff safety, we upgraded camera systems at each secondary school, and they're being increased now at each elementary and rec. Our communications department partnered with principals to ensure each school had signs in multiple languages, and our equity department is providing an increased focus on interpretation and translation. We've conducted an analysis of the role of the SROs in our schools using discipline referral data and held a district-wide community conversation on this topic, of which many of you were part. We also added deans at most secondary schools and a few elementaries, which has improved our response time in addressing any behavior or specifically this year, attendance concerns. Our special education department coordinated CPI and verbal de-escalation training for all administrators and school staff, and that was very well received. Finally, our schools continue to win awards, as does our district as a whole, for PBIS implementation. We know this strategy decreases unexpected and unsafe behaviors. Based on the demands caused by the pandemic, sorry, we got one more. We are recommending a change in measurement output for our strategic plan for the 21-24, and we'll go over that in July because we feel that we've met some of these outcomes in terms of PBIS. Thanks, Ryan. Now you can go on ahead to Initiative 1.2, which is to improve culture by using input from staff. And as you'll know, our measurement output is related to the Happiness Advantage Initiative. We are glad to report evidence of change in leadership practices following the implementation of this initiative. Tracy and our human resources team provides gratitude and mindfulness ideas in each of their updates and distributes Happiness Advantage professional development opportunities that all staff complete virtually. We also have a resource page for Happiness Advantage on StaffNet. This work is then modeled and extended by building leadership through their own newsletters and interaction with staff. Through their feedback for this update, leadership teams shared feelings of inclusivity and reported an increased sense of collective responsibility for decision making. This is a summary of the progress made on Strategic Focus Area 1. I've covered a lot, and this is positive climate and culture. What questions might you have at this time?
Scott, do you have any questions?
Yes. What is the status of the secure entry and camera installations? I know there was recently some discussion about spending CARES Act money on that in our finance committee. Had to be done before year end, I believe.
Yep. So I can comment on the cameras. So those are currently, we're working with the company to install. We are using CARES money for the cameras. The secondary systems are all already done. That was not CARES money. That was money that the board had approved previously. So the elementary are in process. MDE has approved that. The secure entrances isn't something that would be a CARES eligible expense, but we'll have a conversation probably at a future board meeting in the near future about that as we start talking about some cabinet priorities for some upcoming projects and needs that are out there. So more to come on that. That one's not currently in the works as of today.
Thank you. Any other questions, Scott? Les? No? Zach? Alice? No? Monica?
No questions.
Natalie?
No questions, thank you.
And I'm good too. Thank you. You can continue.
So we'll move on then to the second strategic focus area, which centers around instruction that produces positive outcomes. And as you can see on the left, we look at eliminating barriers to learning among a racially, culturally, and linguistically diverse student population. So our first initiative, 2.1A, you can see at the bottom on the left, as Lori pointed out, and then our outcomes over on the right. Action steps that we've taken towards this have really centered around our administrators being trained on what to look for in walkthroughs and in observations. So a real heavy focus on being culturally relevant in those. As many of you have heard throughout different presentations, we have really targeted our expansion of culturally relevant classroom and library reading materials. We've had a strong focus on increasing classroom libraries with resources that have been reviewed by multiple stakeholders, including our equity team. And then, as you've heard in several of our school presentations, our school improvement plans, or our SIP plans, and their target pages have identified any potential barriers to learning from a culturally relevant perspective. So they've really looked at the data very, very carefully and broken it down into different demographic groups to identify those barriers and to look for solutions within their buildings. We have had a lot of professional development for our administrators and for our teachers, including National Urban Alliance training and Innocent Classroom training. Our equity team has put together some really strong professional development in this area, and we've continued our work around culturally responsive instruction. So everything that we're doing with programming and we did a district needs assessment this fall that really looked at data and programming. All of it's done through an equity-driven focused to make sure that we are addressing this in a real systemic way. Sylvia's going to talk about the next initiative.
Thanks, Lori. So still within the strategic focus area of instruction that produces positive outcomes, the other strategic initiative, 2.2B, that we focused on this past school year was maintaining a systematic process to analyze all student needs based on data. And some of the action steps that took place over the past year focusing on this area really stemmed from the comprehensive needs assessment that took place last year. As Lori just mentioned, we had a team of individuals in a virtual setting over multiple days who conducted a deep dive into our data. It was set up as a root cause analysis that allowed us to really get a sense of who we are as a district and where we want to go, and so that we could start figuring out the steps to how to get there. Based on these conversations and the comprehensive needs assessment, we were able to revise our SIP plan, or our school improvement plans. And so the format that you have seen when we were going through the process of figuring out what the school presentations would look like, and now the subsequent presentations that are resulting from that are from the revised SIPs that came out of the CNAs. Other action steps that have taken place related to this strategic initiative are the consistent STAR growth levels, and this is despite us being in a distance learning format last spring as well as hybrid this fall. Additionally, we implemented EduClimber, and EduClimber is a data warehouse system that allows us to really visualize our data in a way that we weren't previously able to do with the tool that we were using in years past. And so in addition to being a place to store all of our historical data and for teachers and administrators and others to go back and reference the data, it also allows them to truly dig into it to start to answer questions that they may have. And then, of course, as you look at data, more questions arise. And it's a really cool tool and way to really truly see what's happening in buildings and start to figure out ways to then intervene. So the tool is being utilized by our MTSS teams as well as others, and really becoming embedded within our structure within our district. Finally, the last thing that I will point out that you see here on the screen is the goal setting with students and staff that takes place. So as usual, but definitely over the course of last year, our sites were reviewing their data regularly at leadership team meetings. Teacher talks were taking place twice a year to review student growth, and teachers through progress monitoring, we're setting goals with students, with their STAR data and others, in order to really see the impact on student performance. And we can pause there for this particular strategic focus area to take any questions that you may have.
Natalie, do you have any questions? No? Al?
I do have a question on on the screen that it's on right now on measurement outcomes 2.2b, where it says,
Yes.
the very last sentence, with at least 60% of students improving or maintaining their achievement level. And I'm wondering what maintaining their achievement level means for a low achieving student.
So, yep, sorry, wasn't trying to cut you off. You can go
Well,
ahead and
I'm
finish.
just trying to ask, I guess, if it is a low achieving student, we must have a goal that's higher than maintaining their achievement level. Is that correct? Or
So this language is consistent with the language that's used through the North Star accountability system with the state, and it's how the state measures growth. And so we're mirroring that. Students are considered as improving or maintaining as long as they are in the partials, meets, or exceeds. Students whose scores fall below in the does not meets, and so in those lower performing percentiles, would not be considered as making the appropriate growth. But even when we're talking about MCA, students whose scores, let's say if you're a third grader and your score falls in the partially meets range in third grade, and then you fall in the partially meets in fourth grade, that's still considered as making growth, because in order to maintain that particular level, even though they're not moving up to meets, some growth had to occur within fourth grade. Otherwise, they would have fallen behind based on how the tests are set up. But if a student's scores are in the lower percentiles or in that does not meet, then it would not be counting towards that.
Are you good? I guess I'm going to jump in. Can you explain to me on the other 40% of students, what are they doing that they wouldn't be included in the 60%? So if we're saying we want 60% to maintain or improve their achievement level, what does the achievement look like for 40% of our students?
So with the goal set of, with it being at least 60%, that is our goal that we set based on where the performance was at the 18-19 school year when they took MCAs. And I don't have that in front of me at the moment, but I can pull that up for you. So the goal was based off of our baseline data. And so of course we want 100% of our students to be improving or maintaining. But in order to establish our SMART goal, it was off of the baseline data from the school year that we were basing it off of when the strategic plan was written. Does that help answer your question, Shannon?
I'm not sure. It just seems like 60% isn't asking for very much. Are we implying that 40% are falling backwards? Or am I misunderstanding this?
So we want at least 60% of our students to improve or maintain, which should mean that roughly 40% may not be, but we don't want them to. It's just that in order to establish our goal, we had to base it off of the data that we had available. And we want to make sure that it is rigorous and attainable. And I can pull up the baseline if you give me a moment. If anyone else has questions while I pull that up, you are welcome to ask them.
Okay.
I was just gonna, can I add something, Chair Haas?
Yes.
I was just gonna say that we talked about this and at the Achievement, Equity, and Integration Committee a couple of times because we viewed this this presentation before it came to the board tonight. And that's a similar question to what folks usually have when we look at this. But I remember talking about how if we have it at 100, which we've done that in the past, that this is a change from setting maybe we're trying to set realistic goals versus, of course, like Sylvia said, we want all children to succeed, but that was my understanding, is that we're trying to set something that's realistic instead of something that won't be attained.
Okay, Monica?
Yes, I have some questions. In the point that we are speaking of right now, I don't believe that I understood the same way that Natalie explained about that this is about setting realistic goals for students. What I understand is that 60% of the students is data that we have a baseline. The other 40% of the students, we do not have a baseline for them. And if that is correct, still, Dr. Haas, can you please explain to me what is the plan for measuring those 40% of the students?
Yes. Okay. So I'll take it one step back to first circle back to Shannon's question, and then I will come back to yours, Monica. So from our 2019 North Star data, and let me make sure that I'm looking at the right one, so that way I'm not giving filters all students. Okay, so from our 2019 North Star data, MCAs, when we're talking about math for the St. Cloud Area School District, 67% of our students were found to either decrease an achievement level or stay in the does not meet range. And for reading, we had 63% of students who were decreasing or staying in the does not meet range. And so based off of that, you can do the math to then see the 23% of students, roughly 24% of students who were maintaining their achievement level, and about 10% or 9% or so were improving. And so we want to flip that essentially by 2022 to see at least 60% of our students falling in that improving or maintaining achievement level, as opposed to the reverse is what we were basing the baseline data off of. And so then, Monica, to answer your question regarding those students who necessarily may not be improving or maintaining, how are we measuring those and what are we doing? And so that goes back to the progress monitoring, the formative assessments that are taking place in the district. And really that formative assessment is what is used to inform instruction. So that way teachers can best meet the needs of students, so we can see them improving and maintaining their performance and over time.
Chair Haas?
Okay.
Chair Haas?
Yes,
Sorry, Monica.
please.
Can I step in real quick just as a gentle reminder?
Yes.
So my gentle reminder for the board is that the board, we're reviewing language goals that we as the board have already approved. Our intention tonight is to give a progress update, and changes to our goals or outcomes can be when you can do that is when they adopt it in the new plan in July. And so it's just a gentle reminder, as a board, we already approved the language of this, in that we're going to do the new updated plan in July. So I just wanted to give that gentle reminder. Thank you.
Okay. I know Les has a question. Monica, did you want to finish there?
Yes, I still have questions. Thank you, Madam Chair. So my other question was, I'm not sure if we're going to talk about this in the next point or not, but it is about the best work practice model. I'm still concerned, and I said it during our achievement and integration committee, I'm still concerned that that does not include arts education within goals. And I know it's taken from the state, but I do wanted to point out that not having arts education as part of the goals in our model, it is concerning for me and some other stakeholders. So it's more of a comment than a question, but I still wanted to see more progress and data in that area.
Okay, thank you, Monica. You're not looking for a response right now, right? That was just a comment.
Yes.
Okay, Les?
Microphone on.
Yep.
I hope I don't confuse this. In the original strategic plan, the 60% and whatever that percentage was actually 100%. And we were in a situation where the staff were, in a sense, forced to say that they would improve the educational level of 100% of the students by a certain period of time. That was clearly unrealistic, and essentially there was really no way to hold a educational staff accountable for a goal of 100% of people achieving at the certain level. And it was, and essentially then it sort of, I think, would dishearten educational staff. What we look at as this ball of 100 and not a 60% and 40%. We have this ball of 100. And what the teachers are saying, what the staff, I believe, are saying is that at least 60% of those people are going to achieve better than they did before, or at least not go backwards. Now, we don't know which ones those happen to be, but now I can look at a teacher and the staff and say, are 60% of our people achieving or maintaining? And they can say, yes, so we've met that goal. And then I think you can build off of that. But the concern that I had some years ago was that we set a 100% goal, which was never been achieved anywhere in the world, and which would say to a teacher doing their best that, well, I know I can't meet the goal, but I'll still do my best. The difference, I think, is that we've set goals that teachers can say, I can do this, and I will do it. And every time I see a student falling behind, I can reach over and grab this one. And the 60% really doesn't mean anything to me other than I got to get all of them. You know, the teacher in their mind will have 100%. I need to help 100% of the students. But the measurement standard by which we say to a teacher, you're doing a good job or you're not doing a good job, is based upon that 60% achieving. So I hope I didn't confuse this anymore. But
Nope, point taken. Thank you. Zach, do you have any comments? Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you. So then, Ryan, you can go to the next slide, please. So the third strategic focus area is program evaluation and resource allocation. And the strategic initiative that is our focus for tonight is 3.1A, which is implementing a system for assessing the effectiveness of district programs and initiatives. As I mentioned before, last year we conducted a comprehensive needs assessment, and we made it through step 4 of the process. And what that basically means is step 1 consists of where do we want to be? Step 2 is where are we now? 3 is how did we get to where we currently are? 4 is how are we going to get to where we want to be? And then step 5 is focusing on whether or not what we're doing is actually and truly making a difference. And so step 5 is that evaluation effort. And by us completing through step 4 this past summer and putting plans in place, we're on track then to begin step 5 this spring in terms of truly evaluating whether or not what we're doing is making a difference based on where we see ourselves wanting to be. And again, that team who took part in the comprehensive needs assessment consisted of district level administrators, building level administrators, as well as other department leads and coordinators. And it was very diverse in terms of the team to really bring their different lenses to the data to do a district-wide deep dive into the programs and initiatives that we have and how they play into where we see our district going in the future. Also related to this area of implementing systems, the Buildings and Grounds team now uses SchoolDude in order to assess needs. And they also revise their staffing structure so that engineers can consult directly with principals. Technology has embedded a survey within teaching and learning to get more information and to be able to use that data to best support students and staff and families. And that's particularly important during this time of distance learning and hybrid and so forth. And really, again, also with the new data warehouse that we have through EduClimber, being able to group students based on their programs and the different interventions that they take part in. And so there's a feature within the tool that allows us to create what they call tags, but basically it's essentially a group. So you can tag me if I'm participating in a certain intervention, and you would be able to tag Lori and group us together and track our progress as a cohort to see the impact of the different services that students receive. And so this is the only initiative for this particular area that we focused on last year. So if there are any questions regarding the program evaluation and resource allocation, I would be happy to take them.
Monica, any questions?
No questions right now. Thank you.
Natalie?
No, thank you.
Zach? Al? Scott?
To do this, we're testing, is that correct? And I know that the general public, maybe we could give them some idea as to what a STAR test is and what an MCA is and how they're applied here.
Right. So for this particular area, it's not necessarily always focused on student assessment results. There can be other measures of fidelity data or fidelity and indicators that are used to determine whether or not a program is being effective. Depending on if the program is geared towards behavior, for example, we wouldn't necessarily use MCA or STAR as our means of determining its effectiveness. And there are, as you can imagine, a number of school as well as district-wide programs and initiatives across our district. And so it's really getting a sense of what all of our offerings are, then streamlining them and figuring out what that individual evaluation should be for the program, depending on what its intended outcomes are.
Thank you. Les, do you have any questions? Monica, I'll be back to you in just a second.
No, thank you.
Monica, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, sorry, I did wanted to ask something. Dr. Hav, so I do understand that this is the measurement goal, and that also we are having a progress report. I don't know if I missed it from where you just said right now, but if you did, could you repeat, please? Where are we at with this alignment? How many programs we have, or what are the parts missing to achieve 100% of programs initiatives having an individualized evaluation plan?
Right. So that is the process. So you've seen, Monica, that spreadsheet that we've reviewed that kind of lists all of the programs that are offered throughout our district. And from that, we then prioritized the ones that we wanted to be our focus for last year for evaluation. And so, for example, we looked at math and reading core. We also are having an ongoing look at co-teaching throughout the district. And then there was the fourth one I'm drawing a blank on, but it was implemented at the middle school, at Kennedy, and now also at the other middle schools. And for some reason, the name of it is
Innocent Classroom.
Yes, thank you, Innocent Classroom. And so those were the primary focuses for last year. And then based on the comprehensive needs assessment that took place over the summer, we were able to get a sense of what the next set should be based on where we want to go. And we will start the evaluation of those this coming spring. And one of the ways that we prioritized the particular initiatives and programs for last year were based on ones that based on funding sources too. And so when thinking about budget and where those funds come from, out of which budgets, looking to see which programs are truly making an impact and wanting to, depending on the cycle of how those contracts work, reviewing those to help to make decisions that would be best for our district.
Thank you. Just a follow-up of that. When do the board, or if that's the board, sees the results of those evaluations?
Oh, that we have not brought them forth, but if that's something that we could either bring when we do our full review of the strategic plan this summer, or if another idea would be for us to bring that to the Achievement and Integration Committee and go through those evaluations at that time. I think there are some different opportunities for us to do that if that's something that the board is interested in seeing.
I don't know about the board, but I am.
I would say yes.
So then, yes, we can definitely figure out whatever makes the most sense and how you all would like to see that and bring that forward.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll move on to the fourth strategic focus area. And this area is around career and post-secondary education options. The first strategic initiative that was focused on is 4.1A, to provide career and work skills related curriculum and instruction to all pre-K-12 students. So we started with 3 main areas as our work towards achieving this. Our EPIC programming, which if you remember is at both of our high schools, and it's exploring potential interests and careers. Our Get Ready, Gear Up program that we have a grant through the state to help with our funding and our startup of this at our middle schools and our high schools. And then really looking at a pre-K through 5 plan. In the action steps, that pre-K 5 plan, we're starting with our AVID, Advancement via Individual Determination. So we'll talk a little bit about our secondary level programming. With our EPIC, we really focused on all of our 9th graders taking our EPIC courses. We had between 85 and 95% of our students enrolled, and we're continuing to work with our stakeholders to create a best implementation plan for that. So Leah Sams will be with us at the next board meeting and talking a little bit more about our pathway programs to explain some of that work. We also have had some phenomenal employer and community partnering for our EPIC courses in providing field trip opportunities and speakers in our online environment. That speaker option has been key this year. We have a lot of options in our secondary that exist for supporting our students in their career and post-secondary exploration and dream development. We have AVID, of course. We have Dreamline and Upward Bound. I'm going to say a lot of programs that you maybe have heard of. Our senior to sophomore program, where students can receive college credits, take college courses, PSEO or post-secondary education options, articulated college credits, work study options. All of our high school counselors are just incredible at meeting with our students to discuss and to plan around their individual aspirations. And we also have started to set up a career and college room at each of our high schools. We've been able to shift some of that support, the resources and the meetings and things to our online environment this year, but you'll see a room set up at each of our high schools in the near future. Our Gear Up integration, we have integrated that into the school schedules at the middle school and into advisory courses at our high school. We're proud to say that part of Tech's SIP plan is that 100% of their students will complete at least 10 of the lessons in advisory that focus on that get ready college and career readiness area. At our elementary, we have AVID that starts in 4th grade. And we know that we have some more work to do to get to that pre-K 5 planning and working around all of our students having more of that career options. But we do have several of our schools that have had AVID career days that have brought speakers in so that all of our students get to hear about the different options that they have at an early age. And Dr. Putnam's going to talk about the next initiative in this area.
Thank you. Our next strategic initiative is 4.2A, and that's to engage higher education, business, and community partners to create increased career and college learning opportunities for students in grades 6 through 12. And you've heard us talk about this a lot in the last few months as we're getting ready for high school registration. And as Lori said, you'll get to hear from Leah in this month yet. But we have established, as you know, a 742 Career and College Advisory. And this group of community and business and higher education partners have been integral in our 612, in the development of our 612 career and college curriculum and our course offerings. We've developed a Career Academy 3-year implementation plan, again, that you'll hear about in a couple weeks. Hope you're excited about that. From our new Director of Career and College Pathways, that was Leah Sams. You guys approved that position in the start of the school year, and that fits very well with this strategic initiative. And then you've also heard from Lori that we have established those career and college centers, whether it be in a virtual environment or as soon as we get back into our schools, it'll be in a brick and mortar environment, and we have staff to support our students in that work. We are excited to that although we're going to keep working on this through the end of the school year, we do feel we'll be ready to complete this goal and to be able to recommend a new focus area when we bring that to you in July. And you have already approved for 2 different initiatives, either 4.2B or C, which are of course tied to this focus area. And so we're really excited to bring that to you. Do you have any questions about strategic focus area 4?
Scott, any questions? Monica, do you have questions?
Yes. So I want to go back to what I said earlier about arts education. So I think that you have done a great job with this career focus piece, and that's what the community have asked for. I also wanted to acknowledge Superintendent Jett that I am not that I realize that we are not changing goals here. But I'm going to take liberty to express my experience in these 4 years in the board. There has not been room, and we're talking about a strategic plan, there has not been real room for us to have a conversation about arts education within our strategic plan, within our schools, or how is that being managed. I have consistently bring it up every time that I can, and it feels to me, and this is my personal opinion, that every time that I bring it up is out of topic. It's like in the wrong time. That is not the time to bring it to the focus. We're not talking about arts education. So what happens is that arts education is not being considered as a whole part of the, or what I am seeing is that it's not being considered as a whole part of the enrichment that students at District 742 need to have. And I do believe that it is extremely important for them to have that. So I feel that it's kind of an aside. There is arts education that is happening. I'm not going to deny that. There have been efforts for arts education to be part of our district, but I don't see enough exposure in early ages for different modalities of arts. I'm not expecting the students in District 742 to graduate of the school at 12th grade and have and choose arts as their majors or their careers. I believe that arts education in general, not one discipline, but many combined together, are part of the enrichment that every student and every human being needs to have. And I don't see enough importance given to it. I do like to know what efforts does the District 742 makes in general terms for this. I see that we have different things that happen during many times of the year. We had several complaints, for example, from different stakeholders when we were doing changes in the offerings for this year in arts. There were some music teachers that were not having the same classes. We talk about that, we discuss it. I understood what that happened, but still, the reasons where we act at some point like that point are really valid for that moment, but that is not the root cause of what that happens, what the students are not enrolling in those classes, why we have to have teachers that are shared between buildings that wasn't the case before. I know that you are looking for relevance, and that is important, and that has been one of the issues of arts education. But while there is not a goal like career that includes that enrichment in arts, and I will extend my topic is not only about arts. When I'm talking about arts, I'm not exclusively talking about visual arts, music, or theater. I'm also thinking that humanities is quite part of it. But I've not seen enough emphasis on that. And I also see art being competing with, for time with things like Phi Ed, although we do give certain more importance, in my opinion, again, to sports activities than what I see elevating and celebrating arts. So as I said, Superintendent Jett, I know this is not to change goals right now. This is not the time to do it. I'm just looking for a space where this can be discussed, understood, and analyzed a little bit deeper. And I also, in regards to this, have a question about how is, in your opinion, the Lori and Lori that are here, how is this seen by district administration?
Monica, how is fine arts instruction seen by administrators? Is that?
Arts education, fine arts, music, theater, and also humanities.
Lori, do you want to speak about it from administrators, and I can add in some about career if you want?
Sure, absolutely. I can tell you that upcoming, and I hesitate to say that because I know we're having the discussion in the moment, but upcoming on the 20th, you'll get to see the development of career pathways, and specifically there is a career pathway called BECA, which is Business, Entrepreneurship, Communication, and Arts. And the exploration of that arts element begins in 6th grade. And we have articulated it very clearly, and in terms of, and Lori can speak probably better than I can on this, but articulating the development and the progression of that fine arts area 6th to 7th to 8th, and then how that blossoms in the high school. And I can tell you from an administrator perspective, they have been extremely receptive. It has been a vital part of all of the conversations that we've had about the career pathways, and I can tell you that it has been a priority. And certainly, I hear you saying in past years, and what I'm talking about is current and as we look forward. But I am really hopeful about. I'm really hopeful about the way people perceive the arts inclusion in the career pathways, because I see it, and I hope the community sees it as absolutely integral, and it has been fully supported by all of our school administration.
And just to piggyback on what Lori was sharing, that was part of our reason for putting the emphasis on the career pathway and the career wheel in our registration course guide. We really want to draw out that all areas of development and all of our contents are important in our development of our students, and making sure that all of our students can see how all of our courses align to those pathways and align to not just future career opportunities, but to interests and passions and things that really relate to their everyday life. So you'll be seeing over the next year into a real intentional focus of how each of of our courses is integrated. College and career is not just, and our career pathways are not just about what we think about as like our CTE, our tech ed courses, but it really is about all of our courses in developing our students for their lives today and for their next steps ahead.
Chair Haas?
Yes.
Monica, you asked about the space to have this discussion. And so I would have two places that I would recommend for that discussion to happen. And within that discussion, you can talk about the want, the need, the interest, but within that discussion, also some of the things that have to be included in that discussion are the history throughout our district and throughout the state, and also the state requirements, which is included within that history. So there has to be an understanding of state requirements in terms of the entire curriculum or the entire requirements from the state. With that being said, the two places of space that I would recommend that conversation, the very first one, and it might be the most appropriate, is within Lori Posh's learning and teaching team or department, because there are fine arts or arts coordinators, there's language arts coordinators, there's math coordinators. And so within that team, that's the first place that pops to my brain. And Lori can talk to you offline about more places in terms of that in space. The second one, where the board is already having a conversation, is the AE&I, the Achievement, Equity, and Integration Committee. But the very first one, in terms of within Lori Posh's department, I think that's where that discussion, that's where that space can be created and where that space would get the attention that you're looking for.
Thank you, Superintendent Jett.
Thank you. Al?
I was just going to take a second and concur with what Monica was saying. I do believe that there is a place for it within the strategic plan. It doesn't have to be an overwhelming majority of the strategic plan, but it should be a piece of the strategic plan, and it should include activities and arts. And the reason for that is because whatever we put into our strategic plan gets a lot of the focus. And I know there's a lot of statutory guidelines that direct our strategic plan, and a lot of this, when you get into reading and math, we're given goals by the state and they become a part of our plan, and we have to show that. And then with World's Best Workforce integrating within the districts the way that it has, that has to become a part of our strategic plan. But arts and activities are a very important piece, and I don't think it's wrong to say that it should have a place within the strategic plan, just to keep the focus on it. So I kind of agree with Monica on that one.
Thank you. Les?
I wanted to, just to make sure that I'm understanding, my perspective is that, and I don't know if my perspective, I'm just sort of making this up as I go along. There's two, I mean, there's more than two, but just the two strains of art issue is, one is art as a career. I mean, that can be music, dance, film, photography, canvas art, you know, being an artist and opening up an art gallery and selling things and selling the art. And the other is art as a teaching tool, which is sometimes the visual can make sense out of very difficult concepts that we can't understand. So I agree with the concept of art, but if I'd like to, when that discussion does come up, that we talk about whether or not we have the ability or want to use art as a in the same way we would use it as a vocational skill development concept, filmmaking, photography, things of that nature. And the other is how teachers integrate art as in visual things and films and film clips and things of that nature to illustrate points they're trying to make. So it's as opposed to just saying the arts. I mean, how would we, in that discussion, how do we include the value of art into school curriculum? So, I mean, I'll stop there because if I keep going on, I'll just confuse myself, but I'm just trying to wrap my brain around that.
Thank you, Les. Zach, do you have any comments?
Well, I would just agree that art, music, literature having a little more place in the strategic plan. I totally agree with that because I'm biased. Music saves lives and helped me make it to where I am.
Thanks, Zach. Natalie, did you have any comments?
I'll just say I'm a former choir teacher, so I don't have to add anything but that to this discussion. Yay, arts. Thank you, Monica, for bringing it up.
Thank you, Monica. Okay. Number
Okay,
5.
let's take a look at our 5th strategic focus area. And this area is around family and community engagement. So the first strategic initiative that's focused on this year is 5.1A, and that's to create school-based connections that bring together families, educators, and community. And we all know the importance and the value of those connections. And I'm proud of the work that our district does to build those connections and really bring that all together. So action steps that we did this year: family engagement plans. Each of our Title I supported schools creates a family engagement plan and a family compact. And they share important information about their sites at 2 meetings in the fall and the spring, and then support other activities throughout the year that involve parents and families. You've heard about the goal setting conferences and our family conferences throughout the year, math and reading nights, STEAM activities, which does include art and the fine arts, because we all agree that those are such important areas. In addition, our schools have a lot of family fun activities and support activities like picnics and game nights. Our secondary schools, as you know, draw parents and families through the many activities that they have to offer: the competitions, the fine arts programs and performances, our sporting events. Really are our biggest draw to get our families and our community into our buildings. Empower Learning engages teachers and parents and students and community partners. They've created space for marginalized communities to have conversations. United Way has partnered with us on events like bingo nights. Our teachers volunteer with the United Way to sponsor and to hold those activities. During distance learning, a lot of our connections with families have been through phone calls and FaceTime and different apps that have allowed our schools to connect closely with our families. And then our district-wide implementation of site councils and advisories. Again, we're proud to say that 100% of our schools have some type of parent advisory or site council. Lori's going to talk about the next initiative.
So actually, I am going to take this one. And it is Strategic Initiative 5.2A, which looks at creating systems and procedures to provide access and opportunity for all of our students and families. And over the past year, we have taken steps towards this in a number of ways. And we'll start off by discussing the Welcome Center. So we have, even during distance learning, we put different measures in place in order to allow us to engage with our families and to get students enrolled in school. So even when we were fully remote last spring, we had it set up where our enrollment applications were translated into Spanish and Somali, in addition to having our applications that are in English. And we had pickup points. We were able to help support families over the phone. And in many cases, our staff were still meeting with families out in different environments and meeting them where they were based on their needs. Another way that we have worked towards this is through our Kinder Express packets. Last year, the Welcome Center worked very closely with early childhood to figure out the best way to streamline the process for our parents who are already our parents. So for our students who are already enrolled in our preschools, we didn't it didn't make sense for the families to have to complete all of the paperwork that new enrolling kindergartners would have to complete, because we already have a lot of that information in our student information system. And so together we figured out a system that would make the most sense and make sure that we were still covering all bases for the information that was necessary. And we were really able to streamline that process. And so as a shameless plug, I guess, it's important to note that kindergarten enrollment does kick off on January 25th. And the Kinder Express part of that is actually kicking off on January 11th. So for our families that are currently our preschoolers already in the district, they have the opportunity to begin enrolling in kindergarten prior to the rest of the community. So starting January 11th, you can enroll for kindergarten online. And we really encourage our Kinder Express families to enroll online because, again, the majority of the students' information is already in our student management system. And so a lot of the work will just be verifying that information hasn't changed, instead of having to fill out lengthy application packets. For our families who would prefer to fill out paper pencil for Kinder Express, beginning on January 25th, for those preschool families who have not yet completed the online process, we'll be able to run a report and your child will receive a personalized enrollment packet. So again, all of the information that we have will be pre-populated, and you'll just have a chance to review the information, indicate if anything needs to be updated, and then for the additional forms that are necessary for kindergarten, those will need to be completed, but everything else will already be taken care of. And so we started that really last year, and it worked out very smoothly. And so this will be kicking off again next week for the fall kindergarten year 2021-22. Additionally, last year we conducted virtual town halls, and those town halls were for pre-K through 12th grade families, and they were supported by Equity. We also had town halls that focused on special education and had 504 focuses, as well as a town hall that was really geared towards providing information on mental health resources. And the last thing that we'll highlight for this particular initiative are the expanded district-wide parent advisories. And so we've consistently held parent-wide advisory meetings that and we were intentional about broadening the scope of those in terms of making sure that we were doing our best to reach all of the families and that were representative of the different student groups within our district.
And the final initiative to update you on is 5.3A. And this focuses around the district advisory committee that we talked about the last couple of weeks, our learning and teaching and world's best workforce advisory. We were able to have our first meeting of the year last month, and I can tell you that we have made progress in diversifying that committee, which was one of our goals. We did have one student attend, and we're looking for additional students to add to that. So working with Tina Lahr as co-facilitator on this, we are seeing a good deal of interest from both our core planning team and from our previous advisory, as well as new members to join that team and be able to provide their input to us. The survey Sylvia has shared throughout the last year or so, some of those survey results that have evaluated our stakeholder engagement. Any questions on this strategic focus area?
Scott, do you have any questions? Zach?
We're saying if you go back to that, it said site councils. If you could just back a couple slides. I was just looking for.
Back one more, I think.
Yeah, one more. There we go. If you could say clarify a little bit for me what the site councils?
Yep, and our buildings have different names for them, so it's what traditionally is thought of as like a PTA.
Okay,
So it's a parent group at each of the buildings.
Thank you.
Anything else, Zach? Al? Les? Natalie?
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
Monica?
So yes, I'm really happy for having this goal in our strategic plan. I understand. So when you tell us about the progress, you often have told us the list of activities that you have proposed, and also to understand the engagement. I think that the only thing that you're using, if I'm not wrong, please correct me if I'm wrong, is the climate survey. But the climate survey is not taken by everyone, and we never talk about the barriers or limitations that people have to take those surveys. So I'm concerned that we continue to survey the same people. So one of the things that I would like to say, and this is more of a comment, but I think that you have had some plans around this, and I'd like you to expand on this, is I'd like to see more information about engagement that happens from different groups of parents to the district, and how do you measure those engagements, and what do you use for baseline? I'm not sure that we already have a baseline for that type of engagement.
Dr. Huff, do you want to talk about that?
Yes. So, Monica, you are correct in both areas. The first with the responses and response rates for our climate survey. That is something that we are always looking to improve so that we can make the response rate and just the results themselves in terms of the respondents more representative of our district. And so one of the things that we have recently started doing both in the spring, this past spring, as well as this fall, was also doing phone calls. So random sample phone calls to gather additional feedback once the window has closed for our surveys, to get a sense of the different, the percentage broken out by race in terms of who has responded to the survey and who hasn't, and then reaching out random sample wise to try to gather additional input. In terms of your second suggestion or your comment, I do not believe that we currently measure engagement with our parent advisories, but that is something that we should absolutely start to implement. And I'll have to work with those who attend and are involved to figure out what would be the best way to go about implementing something like that. So I don't have a response in terms of exactly what the answer is to how we could measure it at this moment and what the baseline would be, but that is something that we'll definitely look into, and so I can follow up with you.
I have a question regarding the PTAs and site councils. Some schools have really good PTAs. I was involved in one at Kennedy, and it was great. As site council up at Apollo, my wife and I were the only ones that showed up. It's very sketchy, and I'm not sure how we're going to fix that.
I can tell you things have improved at Apollo in the last few years, and our principals are really working hard to engage our families in authentic decision making, helping them be really part of the conversation. But we will certainly take this feedback to heart. I've been taking notes, and we will figure out how to measure this effectively for the board. And
Chair Haas, can I say one thing about
Yes.
site councils?
Please.
So I've been going to the Apollo one and the North one. I just am lucky that the schools that I represent as part of the board, my kids are also at, so I get to wear all the hats there. But it's been, I can specifically say for the Apollo one, we've been doing it virtually, but Alicia, the principal there, really gives like a broad overview of some things that are happening and then opens it up for parents. And there's been everything from like a really specific parent question to more of, a general question. But it's really been a place, I think, for some parents that don't maybe feel like they know how to connect during the day. to be able to then come and say, this is the problem I'm having, and then to be able to get resources from that. So it's going well at Apollo. Of course, we would always love to have more people, right? But that's not a 742 only problem. That's just parent engagement, period. So thanks for having those.
Thank you. Okay. Willie, were you jumping in there? Your microphone was on for a second.
Thank you for asking. I accidentally hit the button and did not mean to do that. So no, I did not have any comment. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll be glad to wrap. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm glad to
Actually,
wrap
I have
up.
a quick one. Just, I think we're kind of at the end here, but I just want to say thanks for updating us on where we were at. And I appreciate that. And I know that the reason that was done is because we're looking to extend this strategic plan into the July, August period so that we can start a new one at the right time of year. But I think that any of the conversations that we had tonight talking about where we would like to see it go, although I don't expect you, and I don't think anyone expects you to change it on this current existing strategic plan. I think it can be very helpful to you as you begin planning for the new strategic plan to know what's on our mind and what we're thinking about. So I appreciate your listening.
Lori Putnam, did you have anything else to add?
Absolutely. I want to, on behalf of Cabinet, we want to say thank you for the feedback that you've given us this evening. I did try to jot it all down, and we will consider the feedback closely prior to bringing forward a 21-24 strategic plan. We are grateful for the opportunity to share the progress that we've made. We think we've to toot our own horn, we think we've done a really good job despite the demands of the pandemic. And while we are always, as Superintendent Jett says, looking to improve our craft, we are proud of the progress made and honestly think it speaks to the relevancy of this plan. So as I shared at the beginning of the presentation, it is the recommendation of the superintendent and his cabinet to continue working on the 2020-2023 strategic plan through June. In July, we'd like to bring you the 21-24 strategic plan and are seeking your approval on this recommendation.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for your diligence. And I know we get a little excited about this, so we appreciate you tolerating us, and we do recognize all your efforts in this. So thank you, everyone.
Madam Chair, can I make one more comment
Yes.
before we go up? I really like what Al said about how we're having this discussion, you know, in the middle of the strategic plan, technically because of how we're going to, you know, July to June. I'm wondering if this could be, and this is just, I'm thinking out loud for Achievement, Integration, and Equity Committee, if we could do this regularly at the midway point and bring that to the Achievement, Integration, and Equity Committee, go through it like we did this time, and have it basically be a January offering for the board meeting and kind of do a check-in, because this is great.
Lori Putnam, I have a question for you. You said that you were looking for approval on this tonight. Are you looking for an official approval to extend? Okay, so you need a motion.
Thank you, Al. Yes, thank you.
So I would move that we change this or move the dates for the strategic plan to a August through July period, ending the current strategic plan on July 31st and beginning in the new one on August 1st. Would that be correct? That's my motion.
Second.
Just a point of clarification.
Go ahead.
So how did you say that we finished the one? I thought that the motion was to finish the one in 2023. Is that correct?
No, the current one is. I'm sorry. The current strategic plan is the 2020 through 2023, and normally, right now, we would be looking at adopting a 2021 through 24 plan, but we're going to shift that to August for adoption.
can I clarify the dates there? Because Mary has typed up here that we're approving an extension of the 2019 to 2021 strategic plan through June. So we want to extend that through June with
Yes.
the intent to adopt a 2020 to 2023 plan in July, which would probably be the end of July.
Yes. So I move that.
Thanks, Mary.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to be so picky. I so can we move those dates and having approve a plan in July from the 2021 to 2024? I mean, it doesn't make sense for me that we are approving in July 2021 a plan for 2020 to 2023.
Well, right now we're extending the plan through the end of June. Through June. And then we're going to adopt a new plan. I get what you're saying, but we're adopting the 2020 to 2023 plan because it's sort of a rolling plan.
If I may, we're extending the previous plan from
current
plan from now. Instead of ending it now, we're going to end it July, June. Right. And then start a new plan in July that runs from the 2021 through
2024.
Okay.
So we basically drop off the 2020 year and add the 2024.
Right, but we're extending this one as opposed to. Okay, I understand what we're doing. My understanding is that we should have been doing a new plan now.
Yes.
We should have been approving a new plan right now, and we're not going to do that now. We're going to wait and extend and develop that plan, or have them develop the plan and approve it in July. Yes. Okay. So we're just adding a 6-month extension onto the current plan.
Right. And then from here on out, the deadline for new approval is going to be during the summertime. So
Right.
we're aligning with
Okay.
all future school years.
My brain is absolutely clear now. Thank you.
That was my motion.
Okay. So I'm looking for a second. Any
I said a
further-
second.
Okay.
Here, Hess.
Second.
Can you?
Any further discussion?
Oh, go ahead. See if Monica's clear.
Monica, are you good with that?
I'm good with all the explanations. How did the motion being? So again, I'm just asking for somebody to repeat the motion. Yes.
Okay, Shannon, can you read it again? Because I'm going to make it Mary's.
Well, you're adding a different year here. So we are approving the extension of the 2019 to 2021 strategic plan to extend it through June. And then adopt the this says 2020 to 2023 plan in July. But are you saying 2021
to
to
2024.
2024 plan in July?
Yes.
Are you good with that, Monica?
Perfect.
Any further discussion?
It'll work out.
So I moved and Shannon or Scott seconded?
Scott or Natalie did.
I'm sorry, Natalie or Scott? Natalie did? Okay.
Natalie did. Okay, seeing no further discussion, Les, can you call roll?
Natalie Ringsmuth,
Yes.
Zach Dorholt,
Yes.
Les Green is yes. Scott Andresen,
Yes.
Shannon Hawes,
Yes.
Monica Segura Schwartz,
Yes.
Al Dahlgren.
Yes.
Thank you, Les. Last item up for our discussion action items tonight is the purchase of property at 713 Anderson Avenue North, St. Cloud, Minnesota, being presented tonight by Amy Scalarud, Executive Director of Finance and Business Services.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Hawes, Superintendent Jett, school board members, and anyone from the public who might be watching. As you know, the St. Cloud Children's Home property, where our Riverwoods program has been located for a number of years, was recently sold. And as we talked about at the board meeting in December, we were given a 90-day notice that our lease for that space was being terminated. And so we pursued a temporary solution, and the board did approve a lease for that property in a building located at 713 Anderson Avenue North in St. Cloud. That lease was approved at the board meeting in December. Once we had the temporary lease and a short-term solution, our next task was to figure out a long-term solution for housing that program. In working with our realtor and evaluating existing space within the district, costs of putting a potential addition on one property that the district owns, and then also exploring the option that the building that we were planning to lease was listed for sale. It was determined that purchasing the building that we had entered into the lease agreement for was the best option for a number of reasons, economically in terms of cost per square foot, just as well as location, and the ability that the building gives us to expand programs and allow for future growth. And so the district has submitted an offer, and we have an approved purchase agreement, which is of course contingent upon board approval that we're seeking this evening. The sale price, final agreed upon sale price is $1,575,000, and the closing is anticipated to be held next Tuesday, again pending board approval. Are there any questions on the purchase or on the purchase agreement?
Amy, just for the public, how are we planning to fund this?
So the building will be funded primarily from money that remains in a capital bond that the district issued in 2015. That bond was intended to be used to do the HVAC as one of the funding sources for the HVAC projects that we were doing in a number of schools back during kind of a 3-year scheduled project. In those years, we had some savings within our health and safety LTFM budget, where we were able to absorb more of that project cost within that budget. And so those funds were remaining and have kind of been actually sitting designated for a future home, since we've known for a little over a year now that the Riverwoods Children's Home property was for sale. The intention really has been to set aside those funds to be a portion of the funding for that permanent solution. So that is a portion of the money, and then there is money sitting within the general fund in reserved and assigned fund balances. Some of that is from the proceeds when we sold Wilson and the lot adjacent to the Old Tech High School. So those funds are being utilized towards the project. The amount of the proceeds from the sale of those two properties is approximately $213,000. And then we have about $350,000 that remains in our general fund assigned fund balance. That was money that has been set aside a number of years ago. It's the funding source that the district office building, when we purchased that building a few years back. And so those funds weren't all needed for that, and they remain. So it's kind of a number of funding sources. But
so this is a cash sale, and it won't affect property taxes.
Correct. Yes, there's no levy component of this. There's nothing that will impact any sort of tax or levy.
Thank you.
Monica?
So just a question. I'm curious. Where is the money that we got from the selling of the Wilson property? And what is it needed for? Yeah,
so it wasn't designated for anything. Our standard practice when we sell property is that those funds go into the operating capital reserve. So when you look at the financial statements, we have a reserve fund balance for operating capital that has a variety of components. Some of that, is unspent department budgets that are carried forward and being held in reserve. But whenever we have a capital or a facility related revenue, that goes into that operating capital fund. And so that's part of that fund balance. And it wasn't previously designated for anything at the time those properties were sold.
Thank you.
Natalie?
No questions from me. Thank you.
Zach? Al, anything else? Oh, well, Scott?
How large is this building, and are we going to be putting more than one program into it?
Yes. So the building, the main building, there's actually two buildings. There was an original building that's about 33,000 square foot, and then there was an addition put on that's approximately 19,000 square feet. So it's a very significant in terms of cost per square foot. It's a great investment for the school district. For this school year, we will only be moving the programs currently located at Riverwoods, but in the future, we'll be looking at moving other special programs, potentially in STEP or some other special ed programming. In addition, we have a number of staff who are sort of temporarily housed at Apollo. And so we will potentially be looking at having this be a permanent home for some of those district-wide itinerant staff, because as we move at some point in the future towards an Apollo referendum, there's a high likelihood that those staff, there wouldn't be room at Apollo for those staff. So by no means, are we planning to fill every square foot? The beauty of this building is that it allows us for some options in terms of putting programs where they make the most sense and allowing for expansion of programs into the future as well.
Is there a gymnasium?
So there's a separate kind of recreational storage building that has, it's not a full-size gym, but it's pretty close to it. It's about a 7,500 square foot building that has everything already in it. It has basketball hoops and the equipment for volleyball nets and all of that. And so it's not attached to the primary building, but they do have a space to use for physical education and for some recreational space.
Is this located next to Grady Foundry?
Yes, it is. Yep.
Any environmental problems with that?
Nope. We've looked at that. We've kind of done so all the assessments with environmental, and we don't have any concerns with the location of the building.
Thank you.
Les, did you have any?
No.
Al?
Shannon, I would move that we purchase or have Amy exercise the purchase agreement for the building property located at 713 Anderson Avenue North, St. Cloud, Minnesota.
Do you have a second? Scott?
I'll second that, yeah.
Any additional discussion? Seeing no further discussion, Les, can you call roll?
Zach Dorholt. Les Screen is yes. Scott Andresen.
Yes.
Shannon Hawes.
Yes.
Monica Segura Schwartz.
Yes.
Al Dahlgren.
Yes.
Natalie Ringsmuth.
Yes.
Thank you, Les. Next up is Board of Education Standing Committee reports. Board Development Policy and Governance does not have a report. Les, do you have a report?
No report.
Al, do you have a report? Zach? Monica, do you have a report?
Nope.
And Natalie?
Not today.
Okay, thank you. That adjourns our regular board meeting at 8:20 p.m. and is starting the Board of Education work session. First up at tonight's work session is World's Best Workforce, being presented by Laurie Posch, Executive Director of Learning and Teaching. And Laurie, is Julie Midas joining you?
We actually have several people who are here in the background who are part of this plan, so they're here if specific questions come up on their area.
Okay.
So I am happy to share with you on behalf of many, many people, our World's Best Workforce summary from last year and the new plan for 2021. And the entire plan was linked in the agenda, so I'll just go through a few highlights from the plan. So Ryan, you can go into the next one. Just a quick review of what World's Best Workforce is, and we've talked a little bit about this throughout strategic plan and over the last couple of weeks. This is a Minnesota statute 120B.11, and it is a requirement of all districts and charter schools in the state of Minnesota. The two components of World's Best Workforce are an annual summary that gets submitted to the Minnesota Department of Education each year by December 15th. The requirement of a public meeting yearly, and last year's meeting was held on February 24th. And that summary was reviewed with the committee, the World's Best Workforce Learning and Teaching Advisory, on December 15th of this current school year. And then the second component is that the plan and the summary must both be published. And one of the options to publish that plan for the public is on a district website. And that's what we do with both our summary and our plan once it's approved. So the components that are in the areas that are in the World's Best Workforce are: all students are ready for school, all third graders can read at grade level, all racial and economic achievement gaps between students are closed, all students are ready for career and college, and all students graduate from high school. You might notice that over the years, the wording changes slightly in each of those areas, but the main focus of each of the areas remains the same. They have also added into the World's Best Workforce a component that deals with equitable access to effective and diverse teachers. And Tracy later on will be sharing some of our staff demographics that helps relate to this portion of it, but it's not one of the areas in the actual plan itself. So let's talk about our World's Best Workforce summary from the 2019-2020 school. As I mentioned before, our annual report was submitted to the Minnesota Department of Education in December. We do have that summary, the complete summary, posted on the website. And some of you know that we had talked about bringing this forward to the board earlier, and the Minnesota Department of Education was really looking at what that summary should look like for last year, because most districts had their goals set around the MCA test, and that test was not given in the spring. So the summary information was given out to us by MDE, and information about what the next plan needed to include. And the state also put out a pretty strong statement about the awareness regarding measurement of the plans for last year. That summary also does include a progress report from the Achievement and Integration Plan. We're not going to be talking about that part tonight, but know that that is part of what gets submitted to the state at the same time. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to go through each of the areas, and I'm going to show you what was in the 2019-2020 plan for goals, the progress, how we ranked that, and then we'll stay in that area and we'll look at the new goal that's being proposed for 2020-2021. So you can see our 2019-20 goal on here for all children are ready for school. This really is an area, as you mentioned, Julie Midas, that Julie Midas works most specifically on. We were unable to do the TS Gold assessment that's used to measure this in the spring, but we do know that we're on track for meeting this goal, and we have decided to move this forward as a multi-year goal. So the 2020-2021 goal is that at the completion of this year, We do have those goals set to establish the number of preschool students meeting or exceeding the widely held expectations to increase from 85% to 87% as indicated on the TS Gold Assessment. And if you remember that TS Gold Assessment has different areas or domains. It measures social emotional growth, language, cognitive, literacy, mathematics, and physical skills. So the new goal is that we will increase the number of preschool students meeting or exceeding that from 85% to 87%. And Chair Haas, I don't know if you want to spend time on each of the areas asking and answering questions, or if you want me to do the whole presentation.
Let's do the whole presentation.
Okay. So the next area is all third graders can read at grade level. The 2019-2020 goal was set based on MCA 3, and we had to report that we were unable to report if we met this goal because the MCAs were not given. So if you look at our goal for 2021, Ryan, if you can move forward one. Thank you. Knowing that there's so much uncertainty this year, we chose, rather than using MCA as our goal, to use our STAR reading assessment. So what we have put on here is, again, a multi-year goal that by the winter of 2023, the St. Cloud Area School District will increase the percentage of third grade students scoring at or above benchmark on the STAR reading assessment from 43.5%, which was our levels in the winter of 2020, to 50%. We're going to talk a little bit now about what we're doing to meet that. So an important part of this that you hear us talk about all along is ongoing data review. We know that we can't just look at our third grade scores, and we can't stop looking at our data at third grade. So we, our buildings have ongoing data review teams that do that, as well as individual teachers. Supports that we have in place. We've really put a focus on small group instruction. We've been able to continue that and even strengthen that somewhat through distance learning with our Friday sessions where our teachers have small group instruction virtually with our students, and then when we are in person or in hybrid, also in those situations. We continue our co-teaching efforts to have 2 teachers in classrooms, especially during our literacy blocks with EL support and special ed support. We've really strengthened our cognitive coaching model with our academic coaches so that they are trained in asking good questions and coaching and mentoring our teachers and how to look at data, how to analyze data, and how to instruct, change instruction to meet the needs of their students. We do have ADSIS programming, and if you remember, ADSIS is through the state of Minnesota, and it allows us to do some small, very small group instruction for students who are reading below grade level, and then also our Reading Core programs. The next area is that all racial and economic achievement gaps between students are closed. And this is an area that we have 2 focus areas. One of the things that I mentioned at the beginning is that our achievement and integration plan is tied closely with this. So what we've tried to do the last couple of years is to coordinate all of our plans and all of our goals so that each plan has a specific area that we're focusing on, but they all interconnect. So our reading goals for 2019-2020 are listed on here. Again, we were not able to do our MCA tests in the spring, so we are unable to report if we met this goal or not. And you'll see that again on the next slide. Oops, I'm sorry. Forgot that I have our reading goals for this year on here next year. Go ahead, Ryan. So our 2020 reading goals. Again, we are moving to looking at the STAR reading assessment. So the reading achievement gap between students who are English language learners and students who are not English language learners will decrease from 20% in the fall of 2020 to 18% in the spring of 2021, as measured by the percentage of students scoring at or above benchmark on the STAR reading assessment. And then we also set another goal for reading that's based on students who qualify for free or reduced lunch status and students who do not qualify. And we're asking that and our goal is that achievement gap will decrease from 25.9% in the fall of 2020 to 24% in the spring of 2021. Again, measured by the percentage of students scoring at or above benchmark on the STAR reading assessment. And then we move into the math goals. And again, our math goals from last year were based on the MCAs, so we are unable to report if those goals were met. So for 2021, we also moved that to our STAR assessments. Ryan, if you can go ahead one. So our math goals for 2021 is that the achievement gap for students who are English language learners and students who are not English language learners will decrease from 29.2% in the fall of 2020 to 27.2% in the spring of 2021. And again, the same measurement as tool as we used in reading. And then the second one for our students who receive free or reduced lunch status is that gap will decrease from 27% in the fall of 2020 to 25% in the spring of 2021. And we have, again, and you heard some of this in our strategic plan as well. We have a lot of things that we are doing to meet these goals. We do the close look of data that's disaggregated by student groups, and our wonderful Dr. Huff provides that for our building staff as well as our district staff to be able to look at individual building data, at district data, and our teachers look at it for their own class. That data is regularly reviewed by district and building staff, and we've worked real closely to coordinate our efforts with multiple departments and programs to be able to reach those goals. The next area is all students are ready for career and college. Our first goal, and we have several goals in this area. So our first goal last year was around the EPIC, or that Exploring Potential Interest in Career coursework. You can see that we did not meet the goal last year, our first year goal. Our goal was to have 60% of our ninth graders in it. At Apollo, we had 53% of our students enrolled in EPIC, and at Tech, 61%. And if you remember, our students who are in multiple year-long courses do not have time in their schedule for the EPIC. And as I mentioned before in the strategic plan, that's one of the reasons we're working strategically with our buildings to be able to meet that goal. The second goal in this area was to provide the Gear Up, Get Ready coursework for 6th through 8th grade students, and the goal was that 60% of the students at North, 47% of the students met that, were enrolled in the career rotation, and at South, 69%. And again, we're working towards more consistency by embedding that right in the schedule at our middle schools. The third goal in this area was to be consistent with the previous school year, that 90% of students in grades 8, 9, 10, and 11 who are enrolled by October 1st have a personal learning plan, or PLP, or for our students receiving special ed services, an IEP transition plan created in the Minnesota Career Information System, the MCIS portfolio during the school year. And we were unable to report on this because we moved to the distance learning and we're not able to complete that with all of our students last year. And the fourth goal in this area, again, consistent with the previous year, 100% of students graduating on or after 2019-20 will continue to have their progress towards career and college readiness recorded on their high school transcripts. This is also something that is required by statute that was new and has been implemented. We're proud to say that this goal was met. We had 100% of the transcripts that were created by our district had that record of progress indicated on those transcripts. And finally, 2021 goals. 70%, and this is just a little more information for you, 70% of our 9th grade students will be enrolled in the EPIC course, and 70% of our 6th through 8th grade students will be participating in the Gear Up curriculum. This actually is our current goal, is that we have 70% in each of those areas. And as we continue, we want to make sure that we have 90% of our students in grades 8, 9, 10, and 11 have that personal learning plan that we talked about. Our hope is that we will be in person or in hybrid, and we'll be able to make sure that that is completed this year. And to continue the goal, that will be an ongoing goal, that 100% of our students have their progress recorded on their high school transcripts. The last area, all students graduate from high school in 2019-20. So our goal, and if you remember, this goal is always a year behind. So the data that we receive is a year behind the year that we're reporting on. So the 2019 graduation rate, we wanted to increase from 71% to 75% as measured by the 4-year graduation rate. And although we did not meet this goal at a district level, our district rate was 69%. We want to make sure that we point out, and as our high school principals have shared with you, that we do see some strong 4-year rates at our schools. We also saw that our 7-year graduation rate continues to show huge increases throughout the years. The special ed and the EL 7-year graduation rate increased 2018 to 2019. The EL rate increased by almost 15 percentage points over the last 5 years. So although our goal was around the 4-year graduation rate, we want to make sure that we point out the 7-year rate as well. And we decided to do 2 goals for this year, because as we looked at the 4-year rate, we know that for our students, it's important for us also to look at that 7-year rate. So our 2021 goal is that our graduation rate will increase from 69% to 75% by 2024, so that we have that time to get the results back. And that our 7-year rate will increase from 84% to 88%. So again, another multi-year goal. Strategies that we're using, Ryan, one ahead. Strategies that we're using to help our students ensure that they graduate from high school include our AVID programming, our BAR programming, building assets, reducing risks at both of our high schools, which is being implemented fully with our 9th grade students at both buildings. The Dreamline support that we receive, our co-teaching efforts, an emphasis on social emotional learning and making sure that those needs are met for our students, that they feel connected and belonging. And then increasing our offerings and our opportunities for both night school and summer school for students to make up credits that they need. So the next steps, when we had looked at this, we wanted to make sure that you had some time to look at it, to digest it. We do need board approval for this, so we brought this to the work session tonight, and we'll be looking next week or the next meeting for this to be approved. And that's something that we can talk about at agenda, whether that should be on the consent agenda or if we want to bring it back for some more discussion. Once it's approved, it will be posted on our website, and then we will plan our public meeting again to be held as we prepare to create the 2021-2022 plan. Any questions? That was so much information.
Lori, before we open it up for questions, can you introduce your team members that you invited?
Yep, I can't see who's all on.
I can't either.
So I'm not sure who's all here, but I can tell you the people that work on this, and there's quite a few people. Tina Lar, who is our director of our title programs, is the one who really put most of the time and effort into this and worked with Tammy's team on the creation of the formatting. So Tina was going to be here. Julie Midas for the early childhood readiness program. Lori Eckert for our literacy component, Leah Sams for the career and college, Kelly Frankenfield for our EL programming. Probably forgetting some people, trying to look to see if I can see anyone else. Those were the people that I think were planning to be here tonight.
Lori,
It really is, yep, multi-department.
if you look in the chat, you will see who's here.
I will go to that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Make sure I didn't miss anybody.
Yeah,
I had,
it looks like it.
yep, Tina Lar. I think I have almost everybody.
Jan McGuire.
Jan McGuire is somebody that I will introduce to the entire board sometime soon. Hi, Jan.
I think I have everybody.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Scott, do you have any questions?
Yeah, there was quite a bit of mention of the MCAs and the STAR tests, and I'm not sure that the general public has any idea what the difference is.
Sure, I can take that. So the STAR assessment is the local benchmarking assessment that we use in our district. And what that means is 3 times a year in the fall, winter, and spring, our students in kindergarten through 10th grade take the STAR assessment in math and reading. And it is computer adaptive. It's roughly about, I think it's 34 questions. And they receive a score that teachers are able to then use to inform their instruction. And so really the benchmarking, while it does give a sense of where students are at the different points throughout the school year, the real purpose of the assessment is for teachers to then use that data to best meet the needs of students based on what their STAR scores are showing throughout the school year. Whereas the MCAs are a comprehensive assessment in math, reading, and science that happen once a year. It's a summative assessment. So end of year snapshot of students' performance, getting a sense of whether or not students are meeting grade level standards by the end of the school year. And so the MCAs are assessed 3rd through 8th grade, as well as for math and reading, and then 5th grade and 8th grade for science. And in high school, 10th graders take reading, juniors take math, and students take the science assessment the year that they take biology. So it depends on when they take biology course.
Thank you.
Natalie, do you have any questions?
Oh, sorry, the darn mute button always. No, thank you, Madam Chair.
Monica?
Hi, thank you, Manager. The only thing that I wanted to add is that while we had an extensive conversation already about what my thoughts are in arts education and goals, and since we're not approving this, but it's for discussion, I will hope that we see some of that in our time to approve it. Thank you.
Zach, do you have any questions? Les?
No.
Al?
Is the move to the STAR test, is that a temporary move or is that a permanent move?
We're not sure yet, Al. I think that there's a lot of conversations happening at the state about MCA testing as well as at the federal level. Sylvia, I don't know if you want to chime in at all on this. We have moved towards looking at the STAR in several of our other plans because it allows us to monitor the progress throughout the year rather than just a one-time assessment.
Yes, I echo everything that Lori stated, and I would just add that during the conversations that I've been a part of with other assessment coordinators throughout the state, you'll be seeing this reflected in a number of plans for districts. And it seems as though the state will continue to allow us the flexibility to use our local assessment for the purpose of World's Best Workforce. And so it will really be up to districts. And knowing with our district and the way that we're looking at growth, and as Lori just mentioned, the fact that the way that we're structuring our other plans, it fits in really nicely. I think it's likely, but we're still having those conversations right now.
So what I'm hearing is kind of that as a tool for the teachers in measuring their progress towards the goals, the STAR test is a better test, but is the MCA test a better tool for measuring the stated goals of the world's best workforce?
So the STAR test itself has actually been aligned with the MCAs. There are enough districts across the state of Minnesota who use STAR, where the developers of the STAR assessment, the company is Renaissance Learning. They collect STAR data from their STAR districts as well as MCA scores to conduct their being able to create the CUT scores. So basically, we know the CUT scores on STAR that are associated with proficiency on the MCAs. And so another way that we look at our STAR data in the spring, or excuse me, in the winter and even in the fall, but typically more closely in the winter, is being able to see the students who are considered as on track to be proficient on the MCAs in spring based on their winter STAR scores. And then again, in the spring, when they take the spring STAR, we're also then able to look at that in relation to their MCAs to look at the predictive ability of it for our particular students. And what we found over the past few years is that it's actually quite indicative of proficiency on the MCAs. And so it's a tool that helps to inform planning and provide information about students' skills throughout the year. But then it also does give us that further information in terms of predicting proficiency on the MCAs, and they're aligned in that regard.
Okay, I've never heard it put that way before. That's a good answer. Thank you.
Does anybody have any comments about this moving forward on the consent agenda or coming back as a action item?
Madam Chair, I would like to see that as an action item.
You would like it on an action item? Les, were you chiming in there?
Oh, I thought it was on.
I'm not suggesting a debate, but I just thought it could go on the consent agenda unless there's additional information, concerns, questions that people might have about moving forward with it.
Monica, can you comment on, were you asking for some goals, or what more information were you looking for?
Yes, I'm asking for understanding how are we enriching the students through these programs, and how is art involved and related to this? And also, when I heard about the people that has worked in these plans, I don't see, I like to see who works on this, and I like to see who of these people are representing the art sector or the arts expertise.
Then our discussion is not over tonight.
Well, we're at a work session, so we're not voting on anything tonight. But there was a comment made that this is going to be at our next board meeting.
Okay.
And where on the agenda will it be put place? Will it be on the consent agenda, or does it need to be a discussion action item because board members are seeking further information?
Mm-hmm.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
You know, one thing I've been struck with being on the Achievement, Integration, and Equity Committee is how closely this plan is tied to the strategic plan. So what I'm wondering is, you know, I don't think it's not going to change before next board meeting, I would imagine. But that seems like more of a longer question because those two are so tied together. Am I speaking the truth on that, Lori?
Yep, and I know, Monica, we've had a lot of conversations, and I think one of the difficulties, and I see Willie's mic on as well, one of the difficulties is that the legislation indicates what the areas are in the world's best workforce. So it is finding that appropriate place to include that. We are bound by what the legislation asks for in the world's best workforce plan.
And that is all I was going to add, Lori. Thank you for stating that so eloquently.
Any other discussion, comments about that?
So, Madam
So I
Chair,
do
does
want-
that... Oh, go ahead, Monica.
So I just wanted to add, yes, I understand the law is the law, and I'm not suggesting that we are going to change the law. I also understand that when we approve the plan, we're approving what we as board members believe is right and correct, and we may wanted to make additions. And I'm not asking you to change the plan. I don't see input in the people that work in the plan in terms of a comprehensive arts education. You do talk about careers that have to do with arts in the future. I like to see how is that discuss and talk about. And I also concerned that the legislation has a push, and as you said it, Superintendent Jett, the discussion about arts education needs to have a context and history. And then part of my concern in general is that yes, legislation pushes for certain things like a career workforce, and if the legislation does not push for arts in an integral part, then my concern is that we do not prioritize that into our enrichment of the students. So I'm not saying you do need to change the plan. I wanted to know how is this considered when you are making these plans, and how is this considered along other things. So I'm not opposing to approving this, but when you and I also don't think that we have enough information right now to discuss what I'm proposing to discuss. But I like to have that information along the discussion of it. We do talk extensively about this in career in different times of our board meetings. We talk about it when we are talking about buildings. We talk about it when we're talking about a strategic plan. And again, as I said, I don't find the discussion inclusive of other parts of enrichment for us. So I'm not asking again to change what you are working on, but I do want information about how the general enrichment of arts and humanities is considered in the life of a student, while we are considering the state plan or the mandate from the state about career and workforce development.
Chair Haas?
Yes.
Monica, my response to that, and I understand the question. I believe when we were talking about the strategic plan, when that discussion was being had earlier, that is the place, or that's the more appropriate place to have that discussion, or this discussion that you're talking about. It's within the strategic plan. That's just my recommendation. I don't know if Lori Post would agree with that, but in terms of where I would address that, where that conversation can be delved off into, take a deeper dive, and then now the board can have that discussion within the strategic plan, I believe that is a simpler place and a more appropriate place. That's just my quick thoughts. Lori?
I would agree with that. I think we have more flexibility as a district with what we include in our strategic plan than we do with what we include in the World's Best Workforce Plan. And, you know, Monica, I know that I can say that arts are included in our discussions, and as Willie mentioned, we have leads on our learning and teaching team, and we have those conversations all the time. I know that we need to make that more visible for you and for the public about those conversations that are had in the development of all of our plans. But I would agree that it's more appropriate in the strategic plan than it is in the World's Best Workforce Plan.
So Monica, can I come back at you then? Would you feel comfortable with the decision then that we put the world's best workforce on the consent agenda for our next board meeting, and the administration is recognizing your persistent and consistent shout outs to the importance of arts and fine arts and everything that is incorporated in that, and that they will continue to look at that as they develop ongoing strategic plans. Are you good with that?
So I will respond this way. I won't stop, neither consider the discussion any longer. I will accept what the board chair has decided about this discussion and the recommendation of the superintendent and Lori Pash.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions before we move on to item B? Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on to school updates, activities update, and COVID updates presented by Dr. Marcia Beisch, Assistant Superintendent for Elementary Education, and Dr. Lori Putnam, Assistant Superintendent for Secondary Education. And Willie Jett, Superintendent.
Good evening, Chair Haas, Superintendent Jett, members of the board, and community members that are joining us via live streaming this evening. Advance to the next slide. It's a fun little picture video, isn't it, of students collaboratively working together to create a collage or a picture there. Okay, Ryan, you can move on. Thank you. Knowledge Bowl at Oak Hill. Oak Hill had two Knowledge Bowl teams, a Team A and a Team B, that participated in Knowledge Bowl this year. Through the Resource Training and Solutions Academic Challenge programs. Kennedy, Westwood, Clearview, and Madison also had teams participate this year. District 742 was well represented, competing with surrounding neighboring districts. Resource Training and Solutions hosted virtual competitions, which consisted of 14 total teams from our area and surrounding communities, which is roughly about 95 to 100 students. We are all so very proud of our students for their amazing technology skills, collaboration, and teamwork, even in a virtual environment of extracurricular activities. That's not all, though. Stay tuned, as District 742 elementary schools will be participating in the upcoming virtual spelling bee. A special thanks to our district for providing teachers who are Knowledge Bowl coaches and for providing large monitors to allow for dual screen accommodations to keep an easy transition between virtual coaching of multiple teams. So at a previous meeting, I shared a picture of Kennedy second grade teacher, Miss Voigt, and fifth grade teacher, Mr. Schaefer, engaging in book buddies. As you know, these two classes have teamed up and started book buddies on Fridays. Here's just a short clip of the fifth graders reading to their second grade buddies.
Hoglets have no hair at birth. Their backs are covered in short, soft spines. Newborn hoglets stay safe in a nest of grass and leaves.
What I love about this is that even though we're challenged of instructing and learning in a virtual environment, our teachers have worked to create opportunities for students to connect and to build those relationships with one another. And so I wanted to share that with you. The Oak Hill PTSA offered a new twist on a family favorite on Friday, December 11th, online family music bingo. Students and families enjoyed a fun evening of online music bingo hosted by Dr. Rock. 90 minutes of music, singing, dancing, and fun flew by as families and students were able to play along safely from their homes. Students and families were able to connect by exchanging messages, saying hi, and sending out a greeting to a missed teacher or a missed friend. Many staff members also joined in the excitement. The efforts of the Oak Hill PTSA and Family Engagement Committee brought over 100 members of the Oak Hill community together for a great evening of fun. Oak Hill is fortunate to have a very involved PTSA and staff who ensure there are continued opportunities to maintain a sense of community and belonging, even in a virtual environment. And they are finding that they can still be together while apart. Talahi students started consistently using Lexia in early October. Lexia Learning allows educators to provide differentiated instruction for students at all grade levels through a fun computer-based program. Staff and students have worked hard to establish routines that have sustained momentum through distance learning. On this slide, you see students engaged in Lexia while at KidStop during distance learning time. The graph on the slide indicates that in October, 10% of students were accessing grade level material and 90% were accessing below grade level material. Today, 4% of students are accessing above grade level material, 46% are accessing grade level material, and 50% are working toward grade level material. Talahi classrooms compete in Lexia races against one another to see who can complete 1,000 units first. Together, Talahi students have completed a total of 41,313 units since the beginning of October. Talahi staff is so proud of their students and all their hard work and can't wait to see what all their efforts will bring in the spring. Lexia has been purchased as an option for all of our elementary sites and is part of our literacy review. Throughout the last month, Talahi staff has been working hard to organize and establish a comfortable, welcoming resource center for families to access. They have worked to create a resource center at Talahi for Talahi and Lincoln students and families to access when they have a need. Funds from a grant were used to purchase the shelving for the space. FACT, or Feeding Area Children Together, helps provide extra food packs, and staff and community members have provided new or gently used clothing and other items. They cannot wait to get families back in the doors in order to utilize this valuable resource. We have a wonderful community who have already been extremely generous and supportive of this endeavor. And this, I wanted you to know that Discovery also has a resource center like this that they have prepared for families. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Putnam.
Good evening. I'm glad to share some updates from secondary schools and activities. So just before winter break, South hosted an Enrichment Day, which is part of our district talent development plan. During an Enrichment Day, staff design their own enrichment activities, and students get to select the activities that best match their interests. Math teacher Alyssa Bray hosted a snowflake design activity, which you can see in the upper right corner, in Desmos, which is a website that offers several calculators, including scientific and graphing calculators, and a wide range of activities. Students were able to manipulate their snowflakes and change the color, and as several students pointed out during the activity, no two snowflakes ended up alike. Band teacher Anita Boster and choir teacher Kristen Maddock hosted a music composition activity where students were able to use a computer program called Chrome Music Lab to create short compositions with a variety of hands-on experiments, including Songmaker, Kandinsky, I might be mispronouncing that, Rhythm Lab, and Spectrogram. They've shared 2 examples with us tonight, and Ryan's going to play those. Thank you. And on our next slide, you'll see that South Winter Orchestra concert is able to be produced. Veronica Vargas is our orchestra teacher at both South and Tech, and it's certainly an example of the creativity and perseverance of our students and staff to put together a concert in this virtual environment. And we're pleased to share just a small portion of the concert with you in our community tonight. We would be happy to share the rest of it with you because it's really quite extraordinary. In addition to supporting our students academically and emotionally, I know we've talked with you about our social and emotional supports, our staff are also supporting students with physical, tangible objects. At South and Junior High and at Tech High School, Delaney Wire, who's one of our chemical health counselors, brought to administration's attention the need to provide items for students after she got requests from our students. At both schools, they formed a committee, including the school nurse, counselors, administration, and other staff to gather the items that were needed. Tech developed an online survey that was shared with each student through Schoology, and students submitted the survey to identify the essentials that they needed, and our school staff now ensure that they get the items. Within one day, when it just launched this week, within one day, 6 students had already completed the survey. Currently, funding from these items come from school staff themselves and United Way, and we're in the process of seeking donations to support these efforts. And we're excited that activities kicked off again Monday, January 4th, some even bright and early in the morning. So we wanted to give you an update on what's taking place. The Minnesota State High School League has provided updated guidance on health and safety. And as always, our district is committed to following all COVID protocols to ensure our students and staff are safe. Masks will be required at all practices and games. Health screenings will be conducted prior, and potting will be used. The State High School League has not yet issued updated guidance on spectators. We are waiting that information, and our conference ADs meet on Thursday, tomorrow, to discuss the issue. However, our ADs have been exceptionally proactive in ensuring families will be able to view contests and events. Both Apollo and Tech are using the Huddle Focus cameras that were installed this year in our gyms. They'll be live streaming girls and boys basketball, dance, and wrestling with those cameras, or any event that's in the main gyms. Because we're using the district YouTube account, we will be setting up game schedules so fans and families can log in to watch each event. We will have iPads or streaming cameras available for our gymnastics and swim meets that are not in the gym, and we'll stream those through our district YouTube account as well. And we are currently working on a streaming system for hockey at the MEC. We plan to send out links before each event for our fans and families, and for away events, we should be able to get those links from those schools as well. Our goal is to stream all varsity events, and we will try our best to get some of the other games as well. Of course, Nordic skiing is a little more difficult to manage since it's outside, but we are hoping that potentially parents will be allowed to be there and to watch the events outside. Our middle level activities are also taking place currently, and will follow the same guidelines, the health and safety guidelines, as our high schools. And girls and boys basketball, because we know that there's some space issues in terms of our gyms, will actually split the season still. So they'll start in early January on Monday, and we'll go all the way through mid-March in order to allow both to have a season. And now I'm glad to turn the school's update over to Superintendent Jett.
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Lori Putnam and Marcia Beisch. So good evening, Chair Hawes, members of the board, and community members that are watching. In response to guidance from the Department of Education, the Minnesota Department of Health, and local health officials, and based on our changes in our community's health data, We are updating our learning model plans. Our updated plans prioritize the youngest learners as required by the governor, along with the health and safety of our learning community. This systematic, phased approach minimizes transitions and provides the best opportunity for a sustainable, quality educational experience for our students. Please note, our plans accelerate the return to in-person learning for our youngest learners and tentatively for our secondary students as well. Next slide, Ryan. Thank you, sir. On the screen, you can see the calendar for our preschool, elementary, and alternative sites students. On January 15th, there will be no school for PK through 5 and alternative sites. This is a transition day for staff. On January 19th, it's a return to hybrid learning for PK, grades K through 5, and alternative sites. This means our kindergarten through second grade students attend in person Monday through Thursday and learn from home on Fridays. Grades 3 through 5 students attend either Monday and Wednesday or Tuesday and Thursday on alternating days and learn from home on Fridays. Students will follow the same A-B assignments from the start of the school year. Remember, folks, this is just like the beginning of the school year. On January 29th through February 2nd, there will be no school for PK, grades K through 5, and alternative sites. These are transition days for staff. On February 3rd, we will begin in-person learning Monday through Friday for grades K through 5 and our alternative sites. Next slide, Ryan. Thank you. On this slide, you will see that for grades 6 through 12 students, our secondary students, we are planning for January 29th, there will be tentative, no school for grades 6 through 12 because that's a transition day for staff. But on February 1st, it's tentative, we will return to hybrid learning for grades 6 through 12, our secondary students. Again, this is just like the start of the school year. Next slide. As always, we will continue to monitor and adjust based on guidance from the Minnesota Department of Education, the Department of Health, and local health officials. We will provide timely information to our school community, including an update on January 20th regarding return to school plans. All plans are contingent on the district's operational capacity and community health. We remain eager to get our students back in school. That is the goal. And we believe our systematic, phased approach provides the best way to achieve this goal. Thank you, and I welcome questions.
Les, do you have any questions?
No questions, but sounds like a good plan.
Thank you.
Al? Zach?
Just clarifying, February K through 5, Monday through Friday, not hybrid.
Okay, you said February. 1 second. Okay, I'm looking at the same one. So Zach, can you repeat that question one more time, please?
So February 3rd, begin in-person learning Monday through Friday for grades K through 5 and alternative sites, assuming that's not hybrid. That's
correct. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So in other words, that hybrid, like the beginning of the school year on the 19th, that's hybrid like the very beginning of the school year. Then it gets accelerated and you switch on February 3rd. Now it's all elementary, all students are in Monday through Friday. Okay, thank you.
And then will you clarify high school then, 6 through 12, beginning February 3rd?
Okay, and so if I understand the question, Shannon, you're just asking for a little clarification for second. Yep. And so the tentative schedule on February 1st, okay, Shannon, it would be Chair Haas, it would be that's the return to the hybrid learning model for grades 6 through 12, our secondary students, just like the beginning of the school year. You have to, on January 29th, that would be no school for those grades for the secondary students because it's a required transition.
So they would do the Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, no school on Friday. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Scott, do you have any questions? I couldn't hear you.
And I'm just throwing it out there, Chair Haas. I'm not sure if that's one of our District 742 employees, but make sure that we mute folks because you can hear something in the background. Okay.
What are we like?
Okay.
Is that
Currently, we're doing all distance until February. Okay.
Oh, wait a minute. Nope. Scott, can you hear me? Scott, can you hear me?
I can.
yes?
So we are not doing distance learning in through February.
Okay.
We change up. So January 19th, our elementary students in our pre-K through 5, they return to the hybrid learning model, just like we started in the beginning of the school year. Okay. And it's February, I think 1st. Nope, February 3rd, because I got to look at the right screen. February 3rd, if I click over, yep, February 3rd, that's when our 3rd through 5th grade students at the elementary level will now not do hybrid. They will be in school every day, Monday through Friday. So our kindergarten through 5th graders will be in school every day, Monday through Friday, on February 3rd. It is what Shannon asked me was for the secondary. What Chair Hawes asked me, I got to remember that, Chair Hawes. What Chair Hawes asked me for the clarification for secondary was people want to know when is secondary returning to school. The tentative plan for secondary coming back to school, just like the beginning of the school year, is February 1st, and that would be at the hybrid model.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Natalie?
No, thank you, Superintendent Jett, for laying this out. And also, I just wanted to say thank you for answering all of the emails that came in from our parents and our community members. And thank you for anybody who's watching that's a parent for really writing in and telling us of the experiences that your children have had during distance learning. You know, what in some of those emails that we saw, it's exactly mirroring what I've heard from parents throughout the district, that there's some kids that are doing either just the same as they were as in-person school, or sometimes even better. But you know, especially for that 6 through 12, I think we were hearing that our original date of pushing it, based on feedback at that time, you know, was just not sitting well with some folks. And so I guess I just want to put it out there that it's great to be in a district that doesn't just ask for feedback to throw it in the circular file, that it actually means something, and that we take it and put that against, you know, what the governor's recommendation and MDE's recommendation is, and then, you know, make the next best decision. So, yeah, so great work.
Chair Hawes, can I comment?
Yes, please.
Okay. So my comment would be, okay, so somebody complimented Superintendent Jett or me, and there's too many people on this screen that have been putting in time and energy and best practices and thoughts ever since last March. And so I need to acknowledge the executives, the principals, and everybody that's been part of that. At the same token, because it feels like it's never ending. At the same token, I would also like to say thank you to the community for sharing perspective. We're always, as a district, that is something that we welcome. It's not just feedback, but it's perspective. And of course, we received emails, and people believe that we received emails only voicing thoughts about we need to get back to school quicker. Okay, I just want to make sure that I acknowledge the other side, because that's something that as a district, we always need to pay attention to. There's both sides of the coin of the equation. And I received the same amount of, I received the same amount of emails or text messages or phone calls from people saying, thank you for the approach that we took in December. One of the things that I always want to make sure that the world has heard from December to now, or from last March through June, or from the summer to the beginning of the school year, we are someone who is, as Lori Putnam said earlier, always trying to improve our craft. And so we're always taking feedback, and we're always monitoring and adjusting, and we will continue to do that. But first and foremost, we will always, always place health and safety of our students first and foremost. And for the whole world to understand and hear it one more time, do we want our students in school? There is no question about that. But we believe that the approach that we're taking and that we have taken in the past and in the future is the best way to get there.
Thank you.
Yep, that was all.
And the health and safety of our staff.
Correct.
They're all important to us.
And Chair Hawes, thank you for saying that. We sent the email to staff a little while ago, making sure that we place that they understand that health and safety of staff is paramount. But thank you for saying that publicly.
And Monica, did you have any comments?
No comments now, thank you.
Okay, are we good to move on to our last item? Okay, last up, staff demographics report presented by Tracy Flynn Bowe, Executive Director of Human Resources.
All right, good evening, Chair Hawes, school board members, Superintendent Jett, and all my colleagues that are hanging with us tonight on this board meeting. I am reporting to you tonight, as I do annually, about the demographic makeup of our school district staff. And a relevant question, I suppose, is why do we track the demographics of our workforce? Ryan, we go to the next slide, please. Oops, here we go. Next slide, Ryan. So I'll be sharing with you tonight a number of slides showing research and data why this matters for school staff. And this first slide is comments from the former Commissioner of Education. But I think in summary, as you watch the rest of the slides, because there will be kind of a repetitive theme throughout them, it's pretty clear that having a diverse staff is critical to preparing our students to learn and live and work in a racially diverse and global world. And secondly, that it's essential in order to provide equitable educational opportunities for all of our students. So that's the context for which we track and attend to the diversity of our staff as we go. Next slide. One of the other themes that you'll see throughout the research is that there's a huge gap, right, between as our students, not only in our district, but across the state and country, become increasingly diverse. Our teaching staff in particular is not keeping up with that, and that gap is continuing to grow year after year. We see the number of students of color rising in school districts across the country, and the number of teachers of color as relatively static, and we'll talk about perhaps some reasons why that is. Next slide. One of the studies that was done recently by the Coalition to Increase Teachers of Color and American Indian Teachers in Minnesota really reflected that gap. You can see the gold bars there are students of color, and it shows Greater Minnesota, the metro area, Minneapolis and St. Paul, and then statewide. And then the purple bar is teachers of color. And so you see the gap regardless of where you are in the state of Minnesota, but in particular you see that in outstate Minnesota, we sit at a supply level of about 1.2% teachers of color. And whereas in the metro where there's richer resources, they sit closer to 17% in Minneapolis and St. Paul and 7% in kind of the general metro area. Next slide, please. This is a chart that I present to you each year, and so it's got all of the data for our staff by work group, so we can see the changes in each of the various groups that we have working in the district, and then the total for the district. And then also on the bottom of the slide, you see data regarding the local diversity, whether that's in the state or in the county. And so you can see that our county, and the area around us is continuing to grow more diverse each year. And part of the goal of this work is that our workforce really should reflect the diversity that's here in our community, as well as the diversity of our student body. This slide you will be able to study with your glasses on, so I'm going to continue on to the next slides where I show you some bar graphs that are a little easier to digest and see. So next slide, please. So on this slide, you see a snapshot of 7 years of data for our student racial diversity data. And as you can see, that's risen each year, going from 40% in 2013 now to 59.62%. So that's what our student body looks like. Next slide, please. This shows the racial diversity of our non-licensed hourly support staff. And so this would include our bus drivers, cooks, custodians, clerical employees, language interpreters, department staff, paraeducators, behavior teams, and others across the district. And you can see, again, very good progress in terms of the diversity of our non-licensed staff over time. In fact, the non-licensed staff is more diverse than the diversity numbers for the general area of St. Cloud than our community. So we're continuing to attract a very diverse group of non-licensed staff in our district. Next slide, Ryan. This slide shows our teacher racial diversity. And as you'll see in this slide and then in others from state data and so on, the percentage of teachers across the state of Minnesota, teachers of color, has been really stuck at about 4%. And that hasn't budged much. I've been here 12 years and that 4% number just doesn't seem to trend up very much. We've gotten, from 3.9% up to 4.2 or 4.3 across the state. But the challenge across our state is really the supply of teachers of color. And so in those conditions, I'm particularly pleased to see that we're continuing to make really good progress. And you can see that this last school year, we are now at 6.63% teachers of color. In the last school year, we hired 88 new teachers and 12.5% of those were teachers of color. So we're continuing to grow our teachers of color in our new hiring as well at a rate that's much faster than the supply across the state of Minnesota would suggest would be possible for us in outstate Minnesota. So I'm really pleased about that. And I think I'll share some of the reasons why I think that's happening. Next slide, please. This is one reason I think it's happening. I think this is a really critical to the growth that we've seen in diversity in our staff, both in our non-licensed staff as well as our licensed staff. This is the data for our administrative staff. So this would include our principals and directors, executives, deans, all of those that are in leadership positions across the district. And you can see that this year we're sitting at about 23% staff of color in these categories. What you see represented then by this slide is really an active pipeline to attract teachers of color and employees of color. When our leadership reflects the racial makeup of our community, staff see that this is a safe workplace for them. And our students and families see that it's a safe place to learn. And so that's really critical to our success. At the leadership level, as Dr. Green likes to say, we have people of color at the table in the academic, behavioral, and policymaking level of our organization, so we can be highly responsive and adaptive to the needs of our students, families, and staff. Next slide, please. This is a study that kind of reinforces what we have learned, I think, anecdotally through our success here in St. Cloud School District, is that diversity at the administrative level is really where the leverage point is. I think kind of historically, as I've been doing this work for the last 12 years and listening in on this conversation across the state, I think the old point of emphasis was always on how do we attract and retain and recruit teachers of color. And it has been my sense that our most effective tool has been to start by attracting administrators of color, because then they're situated in each of our buildings and helping us to attract and retain and support those staff when they arrive. And this slide indicates that the studies would say that that's true, that we're 5 to 7 times more likely to bring those staff on board and 2 to 5 percentage points more likely to keep them once they arrive here if we have administrators of color that are actively supporting our leadership. Next slide, please. So if we take all of our staff together, that's this slide. This is the total district staff racial diversity data. And so as a total School district, we're at about 11.69%, which again is fairly closely matched to the 14% of diversity in our local community. Next slide. This slide is a good visual of why this work is difficult, particularly as we talk about teachers of color. This shows kind of the key points along the educator pipeline, and that might be a little hard to read. So I will say that that first start at the top of that pipeline is post-secondary enrollment, getting students of color enrolled in post-secondary education. Next, from that point, we move to getting those students into education programs in their educational track, then to completing and graduating with those degrees, then to entering the workforce, and then to retaining those teachers. And you can see that the diversity diminishes at each point along that pipeline. The place where we obviously have the greatest point of influence is bringing those new teachers into the workforce from this very limited pool, and then retaining them once they get here. And those are where we're really focusing our strategies. Next slide, please. The 2019 Biennial Minnesota Teacher Supply and Demand Study, which is done every 2 years by PELSB, the licensing board, again, gives us just data so we can reflect upon our success and our challenges in recruiting teachers of color. And again, you can see from this data that in our region, in our district region, there are only 1.2% teachers of color available and living in this region. Whereas in the Twin City metro area, in that 7-county metro area, there's 7%. So as you look at the outstate data and the sparsity of teachers of color situated in outstate Minnesota, it makes me even more pleased with the success that we've had bringing our teachers of color to 6.6% here in St. Cloud School District. Next slide, please. Kind of taking us back to why it matters, you know, there is just mounting research, and you can see that in our state or across the nation, that says that having more teachers of color in classrooms has a positive impact on student achievement and on closing the achievement gap between students of color and their white peers. Next slide. It's another recent study, a more national study by the Learning Policy Institute, and it found that the positive impacts of teacher diversity are across these 4 areas, and I'll be showing you a slide for each of these areas. So we can just jump to the next slide, Ryan. Number 1, it improves student achievement. Studies show that teachers of color boost student academic performance for students of color, lower dropout rates, and increased chances for those students of taking college entrance exams and pursuing post-secondary education. Next slide. Greater social and emotional learning outcomes. It's really clear from all of the studies that when students of color have teachers of color as role models, they have less absences, less exclusionary discipline, and it lessens that stereotype threat. It increases higher expectations for students. All of those measures around the SEL areas improve with a more diverse teaching staff. Next, all students rate teachers of color high on feeling cared for and academically challenged. And it's really clear that children who have had the opportunity to interact with teachers of color, whether those are students of color or their white peers, all do better in terms of being more culturally aware and more culturally competent as students and as citizens as they progress through their education and out into the communities. And then next slide. Lastly, as again, we think about retaining our teachers of color, the more diverse our workforce, the more likely it is that we have affinity groups and support for all of our teachers of color, and that they don't feel so alone and isolated here in central Minnesota. This next slide is from a study that I shared with you last year. And again, it was done by Ed Allies, and it's specific to Minnesota. And again, it says many of the same things that we just saw in the national study, that when students of color have teachers of color, they're more likely to be placed in gifted programs, less likely to experience disciplinary referrals. They feel more cared for, they complete their homework, and they're more likely to graduate. All of those indicators. But the study again went on to say, and yet in Minnesota, just 4% of licensed teachers of colors are are teachers of color or American Indians. And that number, again, this study reflected, hasn't budged much despite the growth of students of color in our state. Next slide. And so as we talked about last year, we're just, the study by Pelsby said, what is working best? It was trying to give us strategies as school districts to say, what is the research telling us that will help you develop a more diverse workplace? And one of the key things in that area of recruitment was to grow your own. And so we have been in that business for some time now. We offer a parent to teacher program with SESU. As you've heard about over the last 2 years, we have a new Future Teacher Academy program that we're really excited about, and Lori Posch and her team have been doing great work with those future teachers. And then we have this pipeline, I think, that's fueled by our diverse administrative leadership team that really helps us in this area. Next slide. And again, once we recruit them and get them here, the next question is, how do we retain them and keep them here? And the things that really make a difference based on the research is having comprehensive mentorship programs, which we have. We have a 3-year mentorship program, which most districts don't have. We have high support for our new teachers throughout their probationary period. The Learning and Teaching Department offers robust professional development so that teachers feel equipped to the challenging work of this job. I'm sure you've all seen the studies about teachers leaving the field within 5 years. And as the world has gotten more complex and more challenging in education, that those numbers have not improved. But we have not seen those kinds of numbers in St. Cloud schools. I think we've had a really strong program of supporting our teachers, and I credit all of our district leaders, both from the Learning and Teaching Department, our assistant soups, and all of our principals and directors in creating that environment where our teachers feel like they can be successful. And if there are skills and tools that they need, we figure out how to deliver those and provide that support and professional development. Next, it's about offering progression opportunities. And so we have those TOSA positions so that there's teacher leadership growth opportunities for our teaching staff, whether that's as a dean or an academic coach or in our talent development program or other administrative training programs. Those are available in our district as well, which I think help us retain folks. And then in green, you see one of our new strategies for this year is the Equity Department development of affinity groups for our teachers of color. We had hoped to kick those off at the start of the school year, but this COVID business has slowed progress on that. But we've been working with the Equity Department, and those groups are getting ready to form here as we start the new year. So I'm looking forward to that as well. Next slide. A question that gets asked is, well, what's the target, or how many teachers of color are needed? And this is a conversation that Dr. Green and I have had throughout the years that he's been having, I think, with the district and the school board for a long time. And so, again, I always like to say that there isn't a magic number, there isn't a quota that we're looking for. It's really just about creating a felt sense that people of color are integral to the work that we do here in the district. And so when we hit that critical mass, we know that we will do a better job in ensuring that curriculum and pedagogy and resources are multicultural and recognizing the diversity of the student body that we educate every day. We know that when we have enough staff of color, that they provide those powerful and positive and consistent role models, not only again for students of color, but for all students to see peers of color and teachers of color and staff of color operating throughout the district. And finally, it ensures that all of us understand and see teachers of color, staff of color as really critical and essential to our partnership in this educational process. So it's not a number, it's that felt experience that we have a rich and diverse workforce that reflects the rich and diverse community and student body that we educate here every day. Next slide, the strategies for moving forward. We'll be continuing all the things that we're doing, of course, but some of the focuses as we go forward this year and into next year are the development of those affinity groups as part of our retention strategies. We are also had scheduled this year a non-licensed career fair, which has also gotten tricky in a COVID environment. Virtual career fairs aren't quite as effective as real in-person ones, but we're working on a way to do some of those virtually right now, and then planning post-COVID to have a more robust career fair. Next, we're looking at our goals, and so the Equity and Achievement Committee set the goal to move our teachers of color from 6.3% last year to 8%, and I think we've made good progress on that in the first year of that goal. And then finally, I think from my vantage point, one of the most effective things in all of the literature and all the research is to grow your own. When I look at the percentage of teachers of color that are available in outstate Minnesota, it's clear that we have most of the diversity right here in our school district. When 16% of our non-licensed staff, many of whom have 2 years of college already under their belts because they've needed that to be highly qualified paraprofessionals, are here, that's our most effective place to search for our next teacher of color. And so we really want to seek an educational partner, and we'll be reaching out to some of the educational institutions in the state to see if we can find a partner that can really provide a very targeted partnership with us to move our folks with 2-year degrees or 2 years of college education into a licensed teaching position in a cohort model, in a model that's really designed with weekend and evening courses for adult learners. Some of the challenges we've had with our current partnership is just the availability of courses and the ability for students to stay together in a cohort, take classes on nights and weekends together, and move quickly through that process in a way that they can see the end zone and don't trail off on us during the process. And so we're really going to be seeking, both with St. Cloud State and other educational partners, to see if we can find someone that can really develop a really targeted program for us to increase the numbers of our staff that we can move to teaching licenses as quickly as possible. So that's what we've got on our minds as we move forward into 2021, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Tracy. I always look forward to this presentation. I know that that's a big hurdle, it's a big obstacle, yet your enthusiasm to go after this, and I know that you're going to present something that, once again, you've made progress and you're committed to making this work. And so thank you. Once again, you guys are moving forward and getting a bigger piece of the pie, it seems like, with the limited resources out there, and just putting up a great plan to get there. So thanks.
Thank you.
Les, any questions, comments?
Yes, this is, I've been involved in this kind of thing for a long time, and I remember the days when it was like pulling teeth to even get people to talk about it. And then now to watch us move through the transition period to a district that really, you know, when you've been dragging people along for so many years on this thing, and then all of a sudden it's like they were on a slingshot or a rubber band, and now I can't even keep up with them. You know, these folks have outstretched us, and I think it's real important to watch people's footsteps. And I think that this district has the ability to do like the PBIS thing in behavior, that there's a model here that will be valuable for other communities and other states. And I think the real value will be in the outlying areas of you know, Monticello, Sartell, in these areas where people of color want to move to a different kind of lifestyle, and but who have not done so because of some of the issues that Tracy mentioned about didn't feel safe. It does now. And I think the one of the real key factors is that you don't try to recruit teachers of color. You don't try to hire teachers of color. You create an atmosphere that just attracts them. And I think that's what we've done here. So very proud. Thank you, administrative team, for your work. And I know there's a lot of passion that goes into this, and you cannot believe
how happy I am about it. I was talking to one of our former teachers of color, who is now a college professor, and and will be starting his career at Metro State University. I mean, we have these people all over the place. So as you start looking around for administrators of color and teachers of color, there are a number of people who were in our Teacher of Color project that actually started here in St. Cloud many, many years ago, who are administrators throughout our state right now. You might want to tap into those people, and I can provide you with some names, and it will be an interesting process to watch grow. So thank you. I'll be quiet and let you guys go ahead.
Al, any questions?
No, I'd just say good job and thank you for the work. And Les, thank you for the work over all of the years. You've been involved with this for a lot more years than we have as a district. The year just goes back 20, 30 years. Yeah. So there's been a lot of really valuable stuff that you've brought to us too. So I appreciate it.
Zach? Scott?
Yeah, I would like to thank Les and Willie and Tracy. Done good work. Thank you very much.
Monica?
I just I share the excitement of Tracy and Les, and I also believe that this is a really important work. I'm really excited for the peer group, that affinity group that you are creating for teachers. That's something that I have heard a lot from many different teachers of color at the district. That will be a really helpful and important thing to have. So I'm really, really happy that that is happening. I'm also very proud of the work that we're doing and the way that we are celebrating it and presenting it to the board and public. So thank you, Tracy, kudos to that, for that, and to the rest of the administration as well. I am excited to think about the future, and then looking forward to the time that we are sharing data about the diversity of the people of color that we are hiring, in how it compares with the diversity of the students that we have. If we are hiring different people of color from different nationalities, and also from that have been raised here, that represent the students that speak different languages, and speak the students that represent the students that come from different states. So I'm excited for the future and how that represents. I also for looking at other ways of diversity that we are including, and how we can start talking and discussing more freely what that means for our district. So I'm sharing all this excitement of that and looking forward to the future.
Thank you. And Natalie?
Yeah, of course, echoing the same thing that my fellow board members here says. You know, we had a choice where kids were going to go to school. I grew up across the river in Sauk Rapids, and my husband graduated from Apollo, so it was a fight. But what won out is we wanted our students, our kids, to be in classrooms and be taught by you know, folks that don't look like them, to be super honest. That's what the world is. And we want our students to be prepared for the world. We want our kids to be prepared for the world. And that's one of the reasons why we chose St. Cloud Schools. So, you know, I'm so proud to correct people when they say, well, we don't have, you know, what are we doing about teachers of color? Like, we have to have more. And of course, the answer is yes to that. And Tracy so eloquently put exactly why that's difficult, but we're doing it anyway. But you know, it's a proud day when I'm able to say we have the same percentage as Minneapolis, St. Paul, and that we're growing our own through multiple channels to be able to hopefully one day say we have even more than Minneapolis, St. Paul. But thank you everyone for all of your work.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Hoping we can call Willie?
Yep, one last thing. I know we're trying to get done. First and foremost, I'd like to just acknowledge it to Tracy and her team for their continuous work to make things happen as it relates to this endeavor. I also like to say to the board, thank you for the support in this process, because if it's not supported by the board, it does not happen. And then there's this one thing that I will say. You know, Dr. Green mentioned, you know, we can be this model. And so I jokingly say this. Shh, okay? It's a secret, okay? And I'm saying it like this because people always, yes, they are, always and have been saying, what are you doing and how are you doing it? And what ends up happening when you are decent at your craft, or in this case, District 742, us, the board, our HR department, all the administrators, we're pretty good at, we're getting really good at this, and we want to get better. But all of a sudden, people start recruiting your people, okay? And so when somebody starts talking about the Sartells and the Monticellos and the St. Michael Albertvilles and the Minneapolis and St. Paul's and the Ossios and the Anoka Hennepins, and I can keep going and going and going, they somehow come up here and start knocking on our door to talk to our people, because our people are at the forefront and we have qualified teachers and administrators. And so people want our people to now drive down 94. That's an interesting moment for me. They want them to drive down 94 to come assist in their schools. Now, as a board, as a superintendent, as all of us on this call, we need to be proud of that. Some people will say, well, you're losing. If somebody accepts a job in another district or they're being recruited, you're losing your people. And oh, we don't want to lose them. But at the same token, we are, I don't know the right word. Al, you know about trees and flowers and things like that, horticulture. So the right word is not pollinating. I don't know what it is, but we are spreading our wings out there and letting our folks, we're growing it for the entire community, for the entire state. And so just need to say that publicly for that. Al, what word did I need?
I would say developing. We're developing.
I think
I was looking for a horticulture word.
I think what you're doing is sending secret agents out into the world. Every time we send a good one out there, they're talking to people about, how did you get this? How did you do this? Where did you start? And they'll tell them where they started.
Okay, thank you. And Al, I was kidding. When I was saying the horticulture word, you know, like trying to grow flowers or garden. So, all right, thank you.
Okay, well, let's call it a night. That's the end of our work session. It's 9:53 p.m. and have a good night, everybody.
Take care. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.